People expect you to smile, to perform, to be strong, to constantly move forward without ever pausing to catch your breath. You are told to find balance, but how can anyone find balance on a ground that is constantly shaking beneath their feet? It is heavy, is it not? The noise is loud. The expectations are endless. Sometimes, you just want to find a quiet corner, close your eyes, and make everything stop for just a little while. You might look around and think that everyone else has it figured out. You see smiling faces, successful careers, and picture-perfect lives. But beneath that surface, everyone is fighting their own storms. Everyone knows the feeling of sitting alone in a room, surrounded by silence, yet hearing a deafening roar of anxious thoughts inside their head. The turbulence of this world does not discriminate. It touches the rich and the poor, the young and the old. It is the fundamental nature of the reality you live in. The winds of change are always blowing, sometimes as a gentle breeze, and sometimes as a violent hurricane that tears down everything you have carefully built. Long ago, in a lush and vibrant land, there lived a monk named Meghiya. He was a devoted attendant, walking closely behind the awakened one, witnessing profound peace every day. But Meghiya himself was struggling. His mind was a battlefield of restless thoughts. One afternoon, while walking near a river, Meghiya saw a breathtakingly beautiful mango grove. The trees were tall, their leaves thick and green, casting perfect, cool shadows on the soft earth. The air there was still, sweet, and incredibly peaceful. Meghiya looked at this magnificent place and felt a surge of hope. He believed that if he could just sit there, away from the people, away from his duties, away from the noise, he would finally experience true peace. He hurried back and begged for permission to go to the mango grove alone. He was advised to wait, to stay close a little longer, but his impatience was too strong. He was absolutely convinced that a change of scenery was the magic cure for his inner turbulence. Permission was gently granted. Meghiya practically ran to the grove, sat down beneath the most beautiful tree, and closed his eyes. He waited for the profound silence to enter his heart. But friends, do you know what happened? The exact opposite of what he expected. The moment he sat in that quiet place, a violent storm erupted in his mind. Without the external noise to distract him, his internal noise became deafening. Thoughts of desire, memories of past arguments, intense worries about his future, all came rushing in like a flood. The beautiful mango grove did not give him peace. It only acted as a giant mirror, reflecting the chaotic turbulence that was already living inside him. Terrified and deeply unsettled, he abandoned the grove and returned, confessing that the silent forest was a place of torment. The lesson offered to him that day was gentle but deeply profound. True peace does not come from escaping to a quiet place. True peace comes from cultivating a quiet mind, a mind that remains steady even when the world around it is incredibly loud. You do the same thing, do you not? You plan vacations to distant beaches or quiet mountains, believing that the moment your feet touch that foreign soil, all your stress will magically evaporate. You think that if you just change your job, change your city, or change the people around you, the turbulence will finally stop. But you carry your mind with you wherever you go. You pack your worries right alongside your clothes. The storm is not just out there in the world. It is echoing inside you. There is another remarkable story about a man named Bahia. He was a seeker, dressed in rough bark, wandering endlessly because he realized how incredibly fragile and unpredictable life truly is. His heart was burning with a desperate need for answers. He walked day and night, ignoring his bleeding feet and empty stomach, until he found the awakened one walking through a busy, dusty town. Bahia threw himself entirely on the ground right in the middle of the crowded street, begging for guidance. He was told it was not the time, that they were in the middle of a noisy street collecting food. But Bahia pleaded, knowing that life could end at any moment. Seeing his profound sincerity, the awakened one stopped right there in the dust and the noise. The guidance given was simple but earth-shattering. When you see, just see. When you hear, just hear. Do not add anything to it. Friends, think deeply about this. You rarely just see or hear things. You see a message from someone, and you immediately add a layer of anxiety to it. You hear a passing comment, and you build an entire story about how you are not respected or loved. You feel a small pain in your body, and your mind instantly projects a terrible future. The event itself is often small, but the story you weave around it is heavy, dark, and terrifying. Bahia understood this instantly. By simply letting the world be exactly as it is, without adding his fears and judgments to it, his racing mind came to a complete stop. In the middle of a chaotic, loud, dusty street, he found absolute, unshakable peace. You do not need to fight the turbulence. When you fight the waves, you only exhaust yourself. Have you ever watched a piece of dry wood floating down a fast river? It does not struggle against the current. It does not try to swim upstream. It simply rests on the water, allowing the river to carry it safely around the rocks. You can learn to be like that wood. When a difficult moment arrives, instead of tensing your shoulders and fighting it, simply breathe. Acknowledge that the water is rough today, but remember that you are built to float. Many people believe that being peaceful means being passive, that you just let the world walk all over you. That is a deep misunderstanding. True peace is incredible strength. It is the strength of a massive mountain. The winds howl, the rain lashes against the rocks, the snow falls heavily, but the mountain does not move. It does not complain about the weather. It simply exists, deeply rooted in the earth, allowing the storms to pass. Because all storms eventually pass. Look back at your own life, friends. Think about the moments when you thought you would never survive the heartbreak, the financial ruin, the betrayal, or the profound loss. Yet, here you are. You survived all of those storms. They came, they raged, and they dissolved into the vast sky of your life. When you feel overwhelmed, there is no need to force yourself to be happy. Happiness and peace are not the same thing. Happiness is a bright, warm sun, but peace is the quiet night sky that holds all the stars. You can be grieving and still have peace. You can be physically exhausted and still have peace. You can be facing a massive challenge at work and still maintain a quiet center. It simply requires you to stop arguing with reality. When you say, "This should not be happening to me," you create suffering. When you say, "This is happening, now how do I walk through it with grace," you create peace. Imagine you are holding a glass of water. If you hold it for a minute, it is nothing. If you hold it for an hour, your arm will begin to ache. If you hold it for a whole day, your arm will feel paralyzed and you will be in tremendous agony. The weight of the glass never changes. But the longer you hold on to it, the heavier it becomes. The stresses and worries of your life are exactly like that glass of water. Think about them for a few moments, and nothing happens. Think about them all day long, and you will feel completely paralyzed by the pain. At some point, you just have to gently set the glass down. You have to give yourself permission to rest. You do not need to figure out your entire life right now. You only need to take the next breath. Let us look at a beautiful teaching concerning a musician named Sona. He was a delicate man, accustomed to luxury, who decided to seek spiritual perfection. He tried so incredibly hard, pushing his body and mind to the absolute breaking point, pacing back and forth until his feet bled. Yet, peace eluded him. He became deeply frustrated and wanted to give up entirely. He was approached and asked a simple question about his past as a musician. When the strings of your lute are too tight, can you play beautiful music? Sona answered no, the strings would snap. When the strings are too loose, can you play? Again he answered no, there would be no sound. The beautiful music only comes when the strings are tuned perfectly, neither too tight nor too loose. Friends, how tight are your strings right now? Are you pushing yourself so hard to be perfect, to fix everything, to control every outcome, that you are about to snap? Or perhaps your strings are too loose, and you have fallen into despair, letting the days simply drift away without any joy or purpose. Peace is found in that delicate middle path. It is caring deeply about your life, but not being crushed by the results. It is doing your very best today, and then gently letting go of what happens tomorrow. You plant the seed, you water the soft earth, you make sure it gets sunlight, but you cannot force the flower to bloom. You must trust the mysterious timing of life. When you look at the people around you, try to see them not as obstacles or sources of stress, but as fellow travelers caught in the exact same turbulent waters. The person who spoke harshly to you today is likely carrying a glass of water so heavy that their arm is trembling. Their anger is just a cry of exhaustion. When you realize this, your heart naturally softens. You stop taking everything so personally. You respond with a quiet kindness, not because they necessarily deserve it, but because your own peace is too precious to trade for a moment of completely useless anger. This turbulent world is actually your greatest teacher. Without the noise, how would you ever learn to appreciate the silence? Without the chaotic winds, how would you ever discover the deep roots of your own resilience? Every difficulty you face is an invitation to practice letting go. When someone betrays your trust, it is a painful invitation to let go of your attachment to how people should behave. When a plan falls apart, it is an invitation to let go of your need for absolute control. It is never easy, friends. It goes against everything you have been taught by society. But it is the only true path to a heart that cannot be shaken. Consider the simple act of walking. When you walk, you are perpetually falling forward, and then catching yourself with your next step. Balance is not a static, frozen state. It is a continuous, fluid motion of losing your center and finding it again. Life is exactly the same. You will lose your peace. You will get angry. You will feel overwhelmed and you will cry. That does not mean you have failed. It simply means you are a human being participating in the beautiful, messy dance of existence. The practice is not about never losing your balance. It is about how quickly and how gently you can catch yourself and return to your center. You are not required to save the world today. You are not required to solve every problem that is keeping you awake at night. The only thing you truly need to do is to be deeply present for this exact moment. Feel the air moving in and out of your lungs. Notice the colors of the room you are in. Listen to the distant sounds outside your window. The past is a ghost that cannot touch you, and the future is a dream that has not yet arrived. All the turbulence you fear is located in times that do not exist right now. In this specific, tiny fraction of a second, you are entirely safe. You are breathing. You are alive. And in this space of being alive, you can begin to nurture a profound sense of self-compassion. You are doing the best you can with the energy and the understanding you have right now. Forgive yourself for the mistakes you made when you were hurting. Forgive yourself for the times you lost your temper because the weight of the world was just too heavy. You would offer that gentle forgiveness to a dear friend, would you not? Why do you withhold it from yourself? You are entirely worthy of your own love and your own patience. When you become a safe, quiet refuge for yourself, the external world loses its power to frighten you. Let us look at another beautiful moment from the past. There was a fierce and terrifying man named Angulimala. He had caused immense suffering and brought absolute terror to everyone in the land. He was a storm of violence and chaos. One day, he saw the awakened one walking calmly through the forest. Angulimala drew his weapon and ran as fast as he could to catch up, intending to cause harm. But a strange thing happened. Even though the awakened one was just walking at a normal, peaceful pace, Angulimala, running with all his might, could not reach him. Sweating and exhausted, the fierce man yelled out, demanding that the awakened one stop. The awakened one turned and softly replied that he had already stopped, that he had stopped harming all living beings, and that it was the angry man who had not stopped. That simple, incredibly powerful statement completely shattered Angulimala. The awakened one had not stopped walking physically, but the internal running had ceased completely. The mind was entirely free from the turbulent racing of desire, hatred, and violence. Angulimala realized the profound exhaustion of his own endless running. He dropped his weapons right there in the dirt. He chose to stop running away from his pain and stop fighting the world. He chose peace. Friends, you too have been running for such a long time. Running toward success, running away from pain, running after approval. Are your legs not incredibly tired? Do you not feel the deep ache in your soul from constantly chasing things that slip through your fingers like dry sand? You have the power to stop. Not to stop living, not to stop working or loving, but to stop the frantic, panicked running inside your mind. You can walk through your life with the steady, unhurried pace of someone who knows exactly who they are. When the world demands that you rush, you can consciously choose to slow down. When the world shouts, you can consciously choose to whisper. You do not need to reflect the chaos around you. You can be the quiet space that absorbs the noise and transforms it into stillness. Every morning, before you look at the flashing screens that bring the world's turbulence right into your bed, take just 1 minute to remember your own inherent stillness. Before you become a worker, a parent, a friend, or a citizen, you are simply a conscious being. You are the vast, open sky, and your thoughts, your worries, and your tasks are just passing clouds. The clouds will always come and go. Some will be dark and heavy with rain, and some will be light and fluffy. But no cloud has ever damaged the sky. The sky simply holds them all, completely unharmed, completely pure. You are that sky. When you deeply realize this, the heavy burden of existence begins to lift. You still engage with the world. You still comfort a crying child. You still pay your bills and do your work. But you do it with a lightness in your heart. You act with immense love, but without the desperate, clinging attachment to the outcome. You become a person who can sit in a room full of panicked people and radiate a calm that acts like medicine for everyone around you. This is the greatest gift you can ever offer to a turbulent world. A peaceful heart is a silent revolution. It changes the atmosphere of every room you enter. Do not be discouraged when the storm inside you flares up again. Do not judge yourself harshly when you lose your temper or when anxiety grips your chest in the middle of the night. This journey is not a straight line ascending perfectly toward the sun. It is a winding path through dark forests and bright meadows. What matters is your gentle persistence. What matters is that every time you realize you have been swept away by the raging river of thoughts, you softly and kindly bring your attention back to the present moment. Back to the breath. Back to the simple miracle of being alive. The teachings remind us constantly that everything is in a state of flux. The beautiful flowers wither, the strong buildings eventually crumble, and the turbulent times you are facing right now will also fade into history. The pain you feel today will not be the pain you feel next year. The situation that feels completely impossible right now will eventually shift and dissolve. Recognizing this universal impermanence is the master key to letting go. Why grip so tightly onto something that is already changing? Open your hands. Let the sand flow through your fingers. When your hands are open, you are finally free to receive whatever the universe brings you next. Friends, the path to living peacefully in a chaotic world is not about building a fortress around your heart. It is about making your heart so incredibly vast that the chaos can move through it without hitting any walls. It is about becoming like the ocean. The surface of the ocean can be whipped into terrifying waves by a fierce hurricane. But if you dive deep down, far below the churning surface, the water is entirely still. The deep ocean is completely undisturbed by the storm raging above. You have that exact same profound depth within you. Whenever the surface of your life becomes terrifying and chaotic, remember to dive deep. Move your attention away from the swirling thoughts in your head and bring it down into your body, into your heart, into the quiet rhythm of your breathing. There is a sanctuary inside you that no worldly trouble can ever touch. It has always been there, waiting patiently for you to return. You only need to remember the way back. And the way back is always found in the simplicity of right now. The present moment is the only place where true peace has ever existed. There was another beautiful soul who once approached the teachings with a heavy, broken heart. She had lost everything she loved in a sudden, catastrophic series of events. Her mind was shattered by the sheer weight of the turbulence, and she wandered the streets in deep sorrow, unable to comprehend the cruel unpredictability of life. When she finally arrived in the presence of the awakened one, she was not given complex philosophical answers about why bad things happen. She was not told to quickly move on or to suppress her immense grief. Instead, she was met with a boundless, quiet compassion that held her shattered pieces together. She was slowly guided to see the universal nature of loss, to understand that she was not alone in her suffering, and that every single living being shares this fragile existence. Through this gentle realization, the sharp, agonizing edges of her personal tragedy began to soften. She found peace not by getting her loved ones back, and not by erasing her memories, but by expanding her compassion to include all the suffering in the world. Her personal turbulence dissolved into a vast ocean of universal understanding. She became a source of incredible comfort to others, because she knew exactly what the darkest storms felt like. Your own pain, friends, can be transformed in the exact same way. When you stop resisting your struggles and instead use them to understand the hidden pain in everyone you meet, your wounds slowly turn into wisdom. This transformation does not happen overnight. It is a slow, deeply intimate process of befriending your own shadows. You cannot banish the darkness by fighting it. You can only gently turn on a light. The light of your own gentle awareness is enough to guide you through the thickest fog. You do not need to see the entire staircase to take the first step. You only need enough light to see where to place your foot right now. And right now, in this very moment, you are okay. The air is flowing. The heart is beating. The life force is moving through you. You might wonder how to maintain this fragile peace when you step back into the chaotic rush of your workplace or your busy household. The secret is not to leave your peace behind on a meditation cushion or in a quiet room. The secret is to bring the quality of stillness into your actions. When you wash the dishes, just wash the dishes. Feel the warmth of the water, notice the bubbles, hear the clinking of the plates. Do not mentally write emails or argue with people in your head while your hands are in the sink. When you walk to your car, feel the solid earth supporting your weight. Notice the temperature of the air on your skin. By doing one thing at a time with complete presence, you starve the turbulence of its fuel. Turbulence feeds on distraction. It feeds on a mind that is fractured into 100 different pieces, dwelling in the past and fearing the future simultaneously. When you gather all the scattered fragments of your attention and pour them entirely into the present task, the chaos simply starves to death. Your daily life, with all its mundane chores and repetitive duties, becomes your most profound spiritual practice. Every conversation becomes a chance to practice deep listening. Instead of waiting for your turn to speak, instead of judging what the other person is saying, you simply offer them the pure gift of your presence. You become a quiet, open space for them. In a world where everyone is shouting and no one is listening, offering your silent, undivided attention is an act of profound healing. It heals the other person, and miraculously, it also deepens your own internal peace. You realize that you do not always need to have an opinion. You do not always need to defend your ego. You can just be. This way of living requires a courageous kind of vulnerability. It means dropping the heavy armor of pretending that you have everything under control. It is perfectly fine to admit that you are tired. It is deeply beautiful to say that you do not know the answer. When you stop fighting to maintain an illusion of invincibility, a massive amount of energy is suddenly freed up within you. You can use that energy to simply enjoy the soft light of the late afternoon, or the taste of a warm meal, or the simple comfort of a clean bed. Do not underestimate the power of these tiny, ordinary moments. They are the solid bricks with which you build a peaceful life. A life of quiet joy is not constructed from grand, dramatic events or massive achievements. It is woven from thousands of tiny threads of mindful presence. It is noticing the delicate veins on a fallen leaf. It is feeling the warmth of a mug against your palms. It is smiling at a stranger who looks just as tired as you do. These small moments are not distractions from your real life. They are the actual substance of a life well lived. And as you continue to walk this path, you will begin to notice a subtle shift in how the world responds to you. The turbulence outside will not disappear. The world will always be the world. But it will no longer have the power to knock you off your feet. You will stand in the middle of the roaring marketplace of life, feeling the frantic energy swirling all around you, but you will remain as steady as a deep-rooted tree. You will watch the drama of the world unfold with a gentle, knowing smile, understanding that it is all just a passing show. You will offer help where help is needed. You will speak truth where truth is required, but you will do so from a place of unshakable stillness. This is the promise of the teachings. It is not a promise of a life without pain or a world without problems. It is the much deeper promise that no matter what the world throws at you, you have the inner capacity to meet it with grace, with dignity, and with a quiet heart. You are completely equipped for this journey, friends. You have everything you need right inside you. So breathe deeply. Soften your shoulders. Release your grip on the things you cannot control. The river of life is carrying you exactly where you need to be, and all you have to do is trust the water and allow yourself to float forward into the beauty of the next moment, knowing that even in the darkest storms, you carry an inextinguishable light within your own awareness, a light that has the power to guide you through the longest nights. The darkness is never as absolute as it appears. Even in the deepest shadows, there is a quiet presence waiting for you to simply notice it. You spend so much time looking outward for validation, for comfort, for someone to tell you that everything will be all right. But the most profound comfort comes when you realize that the sanctuary you are desperately seeking has been built inside your own chest all along. Friends, you do not need to travel to a distant monastery or sit in silence for 20 years to find this sanctuary. It is available to you right now, right in the middle of your busy, noisy, complicated life. Consider an ancient story about a master acrobat and his young assistant. They traveled from village to village, performing a breathtaking and incredibly dangerous act. The master would balance a tall bamboo pole on his shoulders, and the young girl would climb to the very top, balancing carefully on the tip. One day, before a performance, the master looked up and suggested to his assistant that they must watch each other carefully. He believed that by watching each other, they would protect each other, display their skills perfectly, and come down safely. The young girl, possessing a wisdom far beyond her years, gently corrected him. She said that approach would not work. She insisted that the master must watch his own balance, and she must watch her own balance. She explained that by protecting themselves, they automatically protect each other, and that is how they would come down safely. Think deeply about her words. How often do you try to balance the people around you? You try to fix your family members, you try to manage the unpredictable emotions of your coworkers, you try to control the chaotic events of the world so that everyone feels safe. You exhaust yourself constantly looking up at the people balancing on your shoulders, terrified that they will fall. But in doing so, you lose your own footing. You wobble. You stumble. And when you stumble, everyone falls. The only way to truly help the people you love is to maintain your own internal balance. When you are deeply grounded, when your mind is quiet and your heart is steady, you naturally become a source of profound safety for everyone else. Protecting your own peace is not a selfish act. It is the most generous thing you can possibly do for a turbulent world. You might ask how to maintain this balance when the ground itself feels like it is shaking violently. It begins with understanding the crucial difference between false security and true security. You spend your entire life building invisible fortresses. You build financial fortresses, emotional fortresses, and physical fortresses, desperately hoping they will protect you from pain and uncertainty. There is a powerful story from the past about a wealthy cowherd named Dhaniya. He had worked incredibly hard all his life. He had built a strong house with a thick, sturdy roof. He had a massive herd of healthy cows, a loyal family, and a great abundance of food stored away. One evening, a dark, heavy storm gathered on the horizon. The wind howled fiercely, and the black clouds threatened to flood the entire valley. Sitting warmly inside his secure house, Dhaniya looked out at the terrifying storm and sang a song of absolute confidence. He sang that his roof was securely thatched, his fire was lit, his cattle were safe, and his family was well protected. He dared the sky to rain as much as it wanted, for he felt completely and utterly secure. Not far away, sitting quietly beneath a simple tree, was the awakened one. He had no house, no cattle, no worldly wealth, and no physical protection against the fierce storm. Yet, hearing the confident song of the cowherd, he also sang gently into the night. He sang that his mind was completely free from clinging, the inner fire of anger was entirely extinguished, his heart was wide open, and there was absolutely nothing left to lose. He dared the sky to rain as much as it wanted, for he was truly, fundamentally secure. Friends, later that exact same night, a massive flood swept through the valley. The raging river broke its banks and completely washed away the strong house of the cowherd, his prized cattle, and all his worldly wealth in a matter of hours. He was left with absolutely nothing, weeping bitterly in the cold mud. His security was entirely dependent on fragile things that could easily be destroyed by the changing weather of the world. True security, the kind that the awakened one possessed, cannot be washed away by any flood, burned by any fire, or stolen by any thief. It is the unbreakable security of a mind that has stopped gripping the world so tightly. It is the profound freedom of accepting that everything changes, everything passes, and nothing can be held forever. When you truly accept impermanence, you stop fighting the natural, flowing rhythm of the universe. You suffer not because the world is changing, but because you are desperately trying to freeze the world in place. You want the beautiful, joyful moments to last forever, and you want the painful, difficult moments to never arrive. But life is a fast-flowing river, not a frozen lake. When you try to grab onto the water and hold it tightly, it simply slips through your fingers, leaving you frustrated, wet, and exhausted. When you relax your hands and simply let the cool water flow past you, you can appreciate its refreshing beauty without any exhausting struggle. Much of your daily exhaustion comes from trying to predict a future that does not yet exist. You construct elaborate, terrifying scenarios in your mind, preparing intensely for tragedies that will likely never happen. You carry the heavy weight of tomorrow on your shoulders today, crushing the delicate joy of the present moment. Consider the beautiful story of the young daughter of a weaver. She lived in a poor village and worked tirelessly at her loom every single day. Once, she heard a profound teaching about the fragile nature of life and the absolute inevitability of death. She took this teaching deeply to her heart, meditating on it constantly with every single pass of her weaving shuttle. 3 years later, the awakened one returned to her busy village. A massive crowd gathered quickly to hear him speak, but he sat silently. He was waiting patiently for the young weaver, who was rushing to finish her daily work before joining the gathering. When she finally arrived, standing quietly at the very edge of the crowd, he looked directly at her and asked 4 incredibly simple questions. Where have you come from? Where are you going? Do you know? Do you not know? The large crowd was completely confused, but the young girl answered with total, peaceful clarity. She answered that she did not know, then she said she did not know, then she said she knew, and finally she said she did not know. The people around her grew very angry, thinking she was being incredibly disrespectful by speaking in strange riddles to a respected teacher. But the awakened one smiled gently and asked her to explain her answers to the angry crowd. She spoke with a quiet, unshakable confidence. She explained that when asked where she came from before this life, she truly did not know. When asked where she would go after this life ends, she did not know. When asked if she knew that she would eventually die, she knew that absolute fact with total certainty. When asked if she knew exactly when that death would happen, she did not know. She had perfectly and gracefully embraced the fundamental mystery of existence. She was not terrified of the dark unknown. She rested beautifully in the profound truth of not knowing. Friends, can you allow yourself to not know? Can you softly surrender the desperate need to have your entire life planned out, categorized, and guaranteed? There is immense, breathtaking freedom in admitting that you do not know what will happen tomorrow. It lifts a massive, suffocating burden off your weary shoulders. When you stop trying to control the uncontrollable future, you finally have the energy to fully inhabit the present. You can appreciate the simple, nourishing taste of your morning meal, the gentle warmth of sunlight resting on your face, and the rhythmic sound of breathing in a quiet room. The present moment is the only place where life actually happens. The past is just a fading memory, and the future is just a vivid imagination. Why spend your precious, limited time living intensely in places that do not actually exist? This turbulent world is filled with difficult, abrasive interactions. People will misunderstand your intentions. They will judge you harshly without knowing your story. They will project their own unhealed wounds onto you. It is incredibly tempting to fight back, to passionately defend your pride, to prove with loud words that you are right and they are completely wrong. But what do you actually win when you win a bitter argument? You might win a fleeting, hollow sense of superiority, but you almost always lose your deep internal peace. Imagine your mind is a clear, perfectly polished mirror. When a beautiful person stands directly in front of the mirror reflects beauty perfectly. When an angry, bitter person stands in front of the mirror, it reflects anger perfectly. But when the person turns and walks away, the mirror retains absolutely nothing. It does not hold on to the radiant beauty, and it does not hold on to the ugly anger. It simply returns to its clear, empty, pristine state without any effort. You can train your mind to be exactly like that mirror. When someone speaks harshly to you, let their sharp words be reflected and then let them simply pass away into the air. Do not invite their angry words to sit down, have a meal, and take up permanent residence in your mind. Their harshness belongs entirely to them, not to you. It is a loud reflection of their internal storm, not a factual statement about your inherent value. Think about how you react when things suddenly do not go your way. Imagine you are rowing a small wooden boat across a large, misty lake. It is a quiet, beautiful morning, and you are deeply enjoying the stillness. Suddenly, another boat emerges rapidly from the thick fog and crashes directly into the side of your boat. If you look up and see someone steering that boat carelessly, what happens immediately? A hot, burning wave of anger rises in your chest. You yell at them, criticizing their clumsiness, demanding an apology for ruining your peaceful morning. Your quiet joy is completely destroyed by their perceived carelessness. But consider a different scenario. What if you look closely after the crash and realize that the other boat is completely empty? It simply drifted loose from its mooring during the night and was blown across the lake by the random, unseen wind. How do you react then? You do not get angry at an empty piece of wood. You might be slightly annoyed by the sudden inconvenience, but there is no burning hatred, no desire for revenge. You simply take your oar, gently push the empty boat away from yours, and quietly continue rowing in peace. The physical impact was exactly the same in both scenarios. The only difference was the complicated story your mind created about intentional harm and personal offense. Most of the people who crash into you during your daily life are simply empty boats. They are driven blindly by the unseen winds of their past conditioning, their unhealed childhood traumas, and their deep-seated fears. When they speak harshly or act selfishly, it is almost always a blind, panicked reaction to their own internal suffering, not a carefully calculated attack on your soul. When you truly internalize this profound understanding, the world immediately stops feeling like a hostile, dangerous battlefield. You stop taking the chaotic, clumsy actions of others so personally. When an angry person crashes into your life, you recognize the empty boat. You do not yell at the wind. You simply use the oar of your own mindful awareness to gently push the chaotic energy away, completely refusing to let it sink your peaceful state of mind. The next time someone acts out of anger or deep selfishness, try to look past their abrasive, threatening surface. Look deeply enough to see the frightened, confused human being trembling underneath the noise. Happy, truly peaceful people do not go around intentionally hurting others. Only people who are in deep, agonizing pain cause pain. When you realize this undeniable truth, your natural response shifts naturally from anger to profound compassion. You do not need to agree with their destructive actions, and you certainly do not need to allow them to cause you harm. You can set firm, healthy boundaries to protect your well-being. But you can set those necessary boundaries with a peaceful heart, without adding more hatred to an already burning world. Pouring cool water on a dangerous fire makes sense. Pouring more fire on a fire only ensures that the entire forest burns completely down. To truly walk this path, you must also examine the heavy armor you wear every single day. Consider the profound transformation of a man named Buddhist. He was born into immense worldly power, a ruler surrounded by unimaginable wealth and absolute authority. He lived in a highly fortified palace, protected by thick walls and heavily armed guards stationed at every single door. Yet, despite this massive layer of physical security, Buddhist was utterly miserable. His mind was a constant, exhausting storm of suspicion and paranoia. He could never sleep deeply, always terrified that someone would plot against him, steal his immense wealth, or take his life. His worldly power had become a heavy, suffocating, terrifying prison. Eventually, the crushing weight of this daily anxiety became entirely too much to bear. He walked away from his grand titles, left his guarded palace, and chose the simple, quiet, wandering life of a seeker. Sometime later, he was seen meditating peacefully alone in a dark, quiet forest at the dead of night. Sitting there in the deep shadows, with absolutely no weapons and no guards around him, he was heard repeatedly whispering softly into the darkness, "Oh, what happiness! Oh, what profound happiness!" The others who heard him assumed he was reminiscing about his luxurious past in the grand palace, longing secretly for the soft beds and the rich, delicate food. When asked later about his strange behavior in the forest, Buddhist smiled peacefully and explained the beautiful truth. He said that when he was a powerful ruler, surrounded by strong armies and thick walls, he lived in a state of constant, exhausting terror. Every passing shadow held a deadly threat, and every unexpected sound made a person jump in fear. But now, sitting entirely alone in the deep, silent forest, possessing nothing but the simple robes on his back, his heart was completely free from fear. He had absolutely nothing left to protect, nothing left to lose, and therefore, no one could truly threaten his peace. The heavy, metallic armor he used to wear was actually the very thing causing his suffocation. By bravely dropping the armor, he finally learned how to breathe deeply. Look closely at the invisible armor you put on every morning. You build thick walls of cynicism to protect yourself from bitter disappointment. You accumulate wealth and social status, hoping they will shield you from the fundamental vulnerability of being a fragile human. You wear polished masks of absolute perfection, terrified that if people see your natural flaws, they will abandon you completely. But this heavy armor does not bring you any real peace. It only isolates you from the warmth of genuine, nourishing human connection. It makes you rigid, tight, and defensive, constantly scanning the horizon for potential threats. To live peacefully in a turbulent world, you must practice the profound, daily courage of taking off that heavy armor. You must allow yourself to be soft, to be open, and to be beautifully vulnerable. Softness is never weakness. Softness is the incredible, enduring strength of water, which can eventually wear down the hardest rock through gentle, persistent, continuous flow. And as you extend this gentle compassion to others and soften your armor, you must also direct that same profound kindness toward yourself. You are often your own harshest, most unforgiving critic. You demand absolute perfection from yourself in a world that is inherently and beautifully imperfect. You punish yourself endlessly for making small mistakes, for losing your patience on a hard day, for not being perfectly calm all the time. Please, friends, be gentle with yourselves. You are carrying a very heavy load, walking on a rocky, unpredictable path, and sometimes the weather is terrible. Stumbling is a completely natural, unavoidable part of the journey. When a small child is learning to walk and falls down on the floor, you do not yell at them or call them a failure. You encourage them softly to stand up and try again. Treat your own precious heart with that exact same tender, patient encouragement. Spiritual practice, or simply the daily practice of being a decent, peaceful human being, is not a grim, heavy duty. It is not a rigid, punishing discipline that drains the natural joy out of life. It is simply a gentle, continuous returning. When the mind wanders off into dark, anxious thoughts about tomorrow, there is no need to harshly punish the mind. Simply notice that the attention has wandered away, smile gently at its restless, energetic nature, and softly guide it back to the present moment. Guide it back to the simple feeling of the breath moving in the chest. Guide it back to the solid feeling of the feet resting softly on the earth. Do this 1,000 times a day if necessary, but do it with profound, unwavering kindness. The beautiful gentleness of the return is much more important than the simple fact that the mind wandered away. The world will likely continue to be incredibly turbulent. Economies will constantly rise and fall, societies will experience deep unrest, and personal tragedies will unexpectedly knock on the door. A wall cannot be built high enough to keep the turbulence out entirely. But a heart can be cultivated wide enough to hold it all without breaking. You can become a deep, vast, immeasurable ocean. The surface may be terribly choppy, the crashing waves may sound incredibly loud, but the hidden depths remain utterly undisturbed. To live peacefully is to walk through the fire without letting the hot flames consume the quiet soul. It is to witness the frantic, panicked rushing of the crowd and consciously decide to walk at a deliberate, mindful, peaceful pace. You have the absolute right to slow down today. You have the right to breathe deeply and freely. You have the right to look at the endless, exhausting demands of society and gently say, "Not right now." The garden needs tending. The deep roots of well-being must be watered quietly today. Because when those roots are kind, strong, and deeply nourished, the branches of your life will naturally provide cool shade and profound comfort to everyone who crosses your path. This is the quiet, beautiful work of a lifetime, and it begins completely fresh with every single breath taken. So let the breath flow freely, let the tight shoulders drop heavily, and let the heavy burdens rest securely on the ground for just a little while as the journey continues forward into the unfolding mystery of this beautiful, unpredictable existence. The path is not always clearly marked, but the inner compass, fueled by quiet awareness and unbounded compassion, has the power to shine an entirely new kind of light and pure, indestructible space that remains beautifully intact even when the world outside seems to be falling apart. This space is not created by hiding from reality or running away from your responsibilities. It is created by facing reality with a completely open, courageous heart. You spend so much of your vital energy trying to construct a perfect, unshakable life. You meticulously arrange the pieces of your career, your relationships, and your finances, believing that if you just get the puzzle pieces to fit perfectly, you will finally experience lasting, uninterrupted peace. But life is not a static, wooden puzzle. Life is a breathing, moving, constantly shifting entity. The moment you think you have everything arranged perfectly, a sudden, unexpected wind blows through the open window and scatters the pieces entirely across the floor. This brings to mind the profound journey of a man named Vakali. He was absolutely captivated by the physical presence of the awakened one. He spent all his time just sitting and staring at the teacher, believing that this proximity, this visual perfection, was the ultimate source of peace. He completely ignored his own inner work. He ignored the restless turbulence in his own mind because he was so deeply attached to an external source of comfort. One day, the teacher decided it was time to break this unhealthy attachment. He told Vakali to leave his presence immediately. He firmly told Vakali that seeing the physical, decaying body was not seeing the truth. Vakali was entirely devastated. He felt rejected, abandoned, and profoundly lost. He climbed to the very top of a high, jagged mountain, completely consumed by blinding despair. He was ready to throw himself off the edge because the external object of his attachment had been suddenly taken away. But in that incredibly dark, desperate moment, standing on the precipice, a profound realization dawned on him. The peace he was desperately seeking was not located in the physical form of another human being. It was not something that could be handed to him or taken away from him. The true teaching was entirely about the liberation of his own mind. By finally letting go of his clinging attachment to an external savior, Vakali turned his gaze inward. He found the indestructible space within his own awareness. He realized that true presence is not about being physically close to greatness, but about aligning your own heart with the universal truth of reality. You do the exact same thing, friends. You attach your deep need for peace to your partner, your children, your bank account, or your physical health. You silently tell yourself, as long as these things remain perfect, I will be entirely okay. But what happens when the body naturally begins to change? What happens when the boundless energy of youth naturally fades and the physical form begins to ache? There is a deeply moving account of an elderly householder named Nakulapita. He was very old, his body was incredibly frail, and he was suffering from constant, exhausting physical illness. He approached the awakened one, walking with great difficulty, seeking some gentle words of comfort for his failing body. The advice he received was incredibly powerful and immediately practical. He was told that it is entirely natural for the physical body to become sick and fragile. The human body is exactly like a delicate, old eggshell, easily broken by the slightest impact. But the profound instruction given to him was this: you must train yourself to say, even though my body is sick, my mind will not be sick. Friends, this is the ultimate, master secret to navigating the turbulence of physical decline and bodily pain. You cannot always control what happens to your physical form. Illness, aging, and fatigue are the natural taxes everyone pays for the privilege of living in a material world. But your mind does not have to become sick just because your body is hurting. You do not have to add heavy layers of bitterness, anger, and despair on top of the raw physical sensation of pain. When your back aches, it is just an aching back. It does not mean your entire life is ruined. It does not mean the universe is punishing you. It is simply a sensation passing through your awareness. By consciously separating the physical experience from the tragic story you tell about it, you maintain a profound dignity and a radiant peace even in the strict confines of a hospital bed. This mental sickness often comes from carrying far too much weight, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. You consume so much information, so many loud opinions, and so many conflicting desires every single day. Consider the story of King Pasenadi. He was a wealthy, powerful monarch who had developed a terrible habit of eating massive, luxurious meals. He would eat rich foods until he was completely uncomfortable, and then he would visit the awakened one, sitting heavily, breathing loudly, and feeling terribly lethargic. He was suffering greatly from his own unchecked overconsumption. The awakened one did not scold him harshly or humiliate him. Instead, he gently taught a short, poetic verse about the vital virtues of moderation to the king's young nephew. He instructed the nephew to recite it out loud every single time the king sat down to eat a meal. The verse simply reminded the king to be mindful, to recognize the natural limit of his body, and to understand that eating in moderation brings vibrant energy and slows down the painful aging process. Gradually, by listening to this gentle, persistent reminder at every meal, the king learned to pause. He learned to eat less. He lost the heavy, lethargic weight. He regained his energy, his mental clarity, and his deep joy for life. Friends, what kind of heavy meals are you consuming in your daily life? You are likely not just overeating food. You are overeating the daily news. You are overeating the dramatic conflicts of other people. You are overeating the endless, exhausting scroll of comparisons on your bright screens. You constantly stuff your mind with so much unnecessary, turbulent information that your soul becomes lethargic and heavy. You lose your natural vitality because your mental digestive system is completely overwhelmed by the sheer volume of noise. You must learn the beautiful, necessary art of mental moderation. You must become incredibly selective about what you allow into your mind. Just as you would absolutely refuse to drink water from a muddy, toxic puddle, you should refuse to drink the toxic negativity that flows so freely in the modern world. You have the ultimate power to turn off the screen. You have the power to gently and politely walk away from a conversation that is filled with idle gossip and malice. You have the power to protect your internal environment fiercely. When you stop consuming the world's endless chaos, your mind naturally begins to clear. The heavy, suffocating fog lifts, and you can finally see the simple, quiet beauty of the life standing right in front of you. This profound clearing of the mind allows you to see another universal truth that causes so much unnecessary, heavy suffering. You suffer deeply because you believe you are a fixed, unchanging entity. You tell yourself rigid stories about exactly who you are. You say, I am an anxious person, or I am a failure, or I am someone who always gets hurt. You build a heavy, iron cage out of these definitions and you voluntarily lock yourself inside. But friends, look very closely at your own direct experience. Are you exactly the same person you were 10 years ago? Are you even the same person you were yesterday morning? Your physical cells are constantly regenerating. Your thoughts are arising and passing away like fragile bubbles in a boiling pot of water. Your emotions flow continuously like white clouds across a vast, blue sky. There is absolutely nothing solid or permanent about the identity you cling to so tightly. To deeply understand this, consider how a beautiful melody is produced. If you take a beautifully crafted wooden lute and smash it into 100 pieces, searching frantically for the sound, will you find the music hidden inside the wood? Will you find the melody hiding quietly in the strings? No, the music does not exist as a solid, physical object inside the instrument. The beautiful sound is merely the temporary, magical result of the wood, the strings, and the skilled hands of the musician coming together for a brief moment in time. When the playing stops, the music vanishes completely into the air. Your rigid sense of self is exactly like that music. It is not a solid, heavy thing hidden deep inside your chest. It is a temporary, ever-changing melody created by the dynamic coming together of your body, your memories, your senses, and your surroundings. When you truly realize that you are not a fixed object, but a flowing, dynamic river of experience, a massive, crushing weight falls away. You realize you do not have to fiercely defend an identity that is constantly changing anyway. If you acted out of bitter anger yesterday, you do not have to carry the heavy label of an angry person today. In this exact moment, with this fresh, new breath, you can consciously choose to be entirely new. You can choose to respond with unexpected gentleness. You are not permanently bound by your past mistakes unless you consciously choose to keep playing that old, out-of-tune melody. You have the absolute freedom to compose an entirely new song today. This is the profound, liberating joy of living in a state of continuous renewal. But what happens when other people desperately try to force you back into your old, familiar cage? What happens when society demands that you relentlessly play the role they have conveniently assigned to you? People will often project their own heavy expectations onto you. They will demand that you be the endlessly successful provider, the perfect, uncomplaining caregiver, or the always available friend. When you try to step out of these rigid, exhausting roles to find your own quiet peace, they may become angry, confused, or deeply disappointed. This is one of the most difficult, turbulent currents to navigate in the river of life. You must learn how to love people deeply without allowing their expectations to dictate your internal state of mind. There is a wonderful, ancient account of a magnificent, massive elephant who lived in a very dense, crowded forest. This beautiful elephant was constantly surrounded by other animals, younger, energetic elephants, and the chaotic, endless noise of the massive herd. The noble elephant loved the herd deeply, but the constant pushing, the endless trumpeting, and the continuously muddy drinking water became entirely too much to bear. The wise animal realized that to maintain its own health, sanity, and peace, it absolutely needed solitude. So, the elephant quietly, without any anger, separated from the loud herd and walked deep into the quiet, untouched heart of the forest. There, the elephant found crystal clear water, profound, healing silence, and deep rest. The elephant did not hate the herd. The elephant simply recognized the absolute necessity of taking care of its own well-being first. Friends, there are crucial times in your life when you must be exactly like that noble, wise elephant. You must recognize clearly when the constant noise of your community, your demanding workplace, or even your own beloved family is muddying your internal waters. Taking a step back is never an act of cruel abandonment. It is an act of profound self-preservation and deep wisdom. You cannot possibly offer clear, refreshing water to others if your own internal well is completely choked with heavy mud. You must give yourself permission to retreat, to find a quiet space, to sit in silence, and to let your internal waters settle completely. When you eventually return to the herd, you will return with a beautifully renewed spirit. You will be able to offer genuine love, patient support, and true presence, rather than exhausted, resentful frustration. This brings us to the very heart of how you relate to the people you cherish the most in this world. The absolute greatest source of joy in your life is almost always the people you love. But paradoxically, they are also the absolute greatest source of your fear, anxiety, and turbulence. You are constantly terrified of losing them. You worry endlessly about their safety, their health, their success, and their happiness. This deep, profound caring is incredibly beautiful, but when it slowly turns into anxious, grasping attachment, it creates immense, suffocating suffering for both you and them. True love is never about holding on tightly. True love is about holding incredibly gently. Let us explore the profound story of Queen Kima. She was a woman of breathtaking, unmatched physical beauty, and she was fiercely proud of it. She was entirely consumed by her appearance, spending hours perfecting her form, deeply attached to the praise and admiration she received. Because the awakened one frequently taught about the impermanence of the body, she absolutely refused to visit the monastery, terrified of hearing anything that would challenge her deep vanity. Her husband, the king, knowing her potential for deep wisdom, cleverly arranged for a song to be sung to her, describing the breathtaking beauty of the monastery gardens. Intrigued by the promise of beauty, she finally agreed to visit. When she arrived, the awakened one, understanding her mind perfectly, manifested an illusion of a woman of absolutely celestial beauty, standing nearby, gently fanning him. Queen Kima was instantly captivated. She stared at this woman, thinking she herself was nothing compared to this divine vision. But then, right before her eyes, the illusion began to age rapidly. The beautiful woman's skin wrinkled, her hair turned white, her teeth fell out, and she collapsed to the ground, a frail, dying figure. Queen Kima watched this entire progression in sheer terror and awe. In that single, profound moment, her deep, grasping attachment to physical perfection completely shattered. She saw the absolute, undeniable truth that all physical forms, no matter how exquisite, are destined to decay and fade. The heavy burden of her vanity dissolved instantly, replaced by a profound, unshakable peace that comes from embracing the truth of impermanence. Friends, you must learn to view everything in your life through this profound lens of impermanence. You must learn to love the people in your life deeply today. Speak genuinely kind words to them. Share joyful, unhurried meals with them. Look deeply into their eyes and let them know with absolute certainty that they are cherished. But do not try to put them in a secure vault to protect them from the changing world. Do not let your beautiful love become an exhausting cage of anxiety. When you look at the people you love, silently acknowledge in your heart that they are precious, fragile gifts simply on loan from the vast universe. By fully and bravely accepting that you cannot keep them forever, you unlock the miraculous ability to truly, deeply appreciate them right now. The present moment becomes incredibly vivid, sweet, and beautiful because it is no longer overshadowed by the terrifying, exhausting fear of future loss. Another massive, heavy source of turbulence in your mind is the heavy anchor of the past. You drag the thick, rusted chains of old mistakes, old bitter resentments, and old traumas everywhere you go. You lie awake at night replaying old, painful arguments in your head, thinking of the incredibly clever things you should have said. You harbor deep, toxic bitterness toward people who wronged you many years ago. You tightly hold on to this heavy baggage, secretly believing that your burning anger is somehow actively punishing the people who hurt you. But friends, holding on to anger is exactly like drinking a terrible poison and patiently expecting the other person to die. The only person you are destroying is yourself. Let us look at the incredible, inspiring story of King Salava. He was a ruler of extraordinary goodness and boundless compassion. His kingdom was deeply peaceful, entirely free from cruelty. However, a neighboring, extremely greedy king saw Salava's gentle nature as a profound weakness and decided to violently invade his peaceful kingdom. The greedy king marched his massive army across the border, seized the lands, and eventually captured King Salava and all his loyal ministers. The greedy king cruelly ordered them to be buried up to their necks in a cold cemetery, completely exposed, left to die a slow, terrifying death in the dark night. But King Salava did not harbor a single drop of hatred in his heart. Even while buried in the dirt, he urged his ministers to remain perfectly calm, to breathe gently, and to actively send loving, compassionate thoughts toward the greedy king who was causing them such immense, terrifying pain. During the dark night, through incredible calmness, immense physical exertion, and sheer courage, King Salava miraculously managed to free himself and then quietly rescued all his shivering ministers. He did not immediately raise an army to seek bloody, violent revenge. Instead, through a series of remarkable, peaceful events, he managed to confront the greedy king directly. He confronted him not with sharp swords or angry threats, but with an overwhelming, unexpected display of absolute forgiveness and unshakable virtue. The greedy king was completely broken by this pure, unearthly goodness. He fell to his knees, wept, returned the entire kingdom, swore an oath of eternal friendship, and spent the rest of his life desperately trying to emulate the profound, incredible peace of King Salava. Friends, you may not be facing a literal invading army, but you are frequently invaded by people who deeply misunderstand you, bitterly betray you, or selfishly take advantage of your gentle kindness. Your immediate, instinctual reaction is to fight back fiercely, to build high defensive walls, and to harbor a dark, cold desire for sweet revenge. But look closely at what that does to your own precious heart. It instantly turns your beautiful, peaceful internal kingdom into a bitter, toxic, exhausting battlefield. Forgiveness is absolutely not about saying that the terrible things people did to you were acceptable. It is not about letting dangerous, selfish people walk all over you repeatedly. Forgiveness is a profound, deeply internal decision to simply stop carrying the burning coal of hatred in your own bare hands. It is the incredibly courageous act of setting the heavy, burning burden down so that you can finally walk forward into your future with a light, free, and joyful heart. You also exhaust yourself daily by constantly seeking the approval of the outside world. You desperately want the world to loudly tell you that you are smart, that you are beautiful, that you are successful, and that you are entirely worthy of love. You perform exhausting, elaborate routines on the stage of society, constantly hoping for a loud round of applause. But the applause of the world is incredibly fickle and entirely unpredictable. The exact same crowd that cheers for you loudly today will easily turn their backs on you tomorrow. If you build your entire foundation of peace on the constantly shifting sands of public opinion, you will live your entire life in a state of terrifying, exhausting insecurity. Consider a person holding a perfectly pure, incredibly valuable diamond in their open hand. They walk into a busy, noisy marketplace and proudly show it to people who have never seen a real gem before in their entire lives. The people look at it and laugh loudly. They say it is just a piece of cheap, common glass. They loudly declare that it is completely worthless. Does the diamond actually lose its profound value just because ignorant people do not recognize its worth? Not at all. The diamond remains exactly what it is, a pure, brilliant, and absolutely priceless gem. The loud ignorance of the crowd does not change the fundamental nature of the stone by even a fraction. You are exactly that priceless diamond, friends. Your inherent worth, your deep, beautiful capacity for love, and your quiet, pure awareness are fundamentally indestructible. When people harshly criticize you, deeply misunderstand you, or completely fail to appreciate your unique gifts, they are simply looking at a pure diamond and calling it cheap glass. Their unfortunate inability to see your true value does not diminish your worth by a single, tiny fraction. You absolutely do not need to scream and argue to prove to them that you are a diamond. You only need to rest quietly in the absolute, unshakable knowledge of your own true, beautiful nature. When you finally stop begging the loud world to constantly validate your existence, a profound, magnificent silence settles smoothly into your soul. This profound silence is not empty. It is filled with a vibrant, healing energy that radiates outward into every single corner of your daily life. It is the energy of true freedom. When you no longer crave the praise of the crowd, you also stop fearing their harsh criticism. You become completely untouchable. The world can loudly offer you a golden crown or a heavy crown of thorns, and you can gently smile at both, knowing that neither defines the quiet, beautiful truth of who you are. This profound realization allows you to walk through the most turbulent environments with a deep, unshakable grace. You are no longer a fragile leaf blown around by the changing winds of people's opinions. You are the deep, solid root of an ancient tree, resting entirely secure in the rich earth of your own being. Let us look closely at a truly magnificent story about a monk named Punna. He lived in a time of great spiritual discovery, but he felt a very strong calling to travel to a distant region called Sunaparanta. This was a place famous for its incredibly fierce, cruel, and violent people. It was a dark, dangerous place where no gentle seeker of truth would ever dare to go. Before Punna left, the awakened one called him close and asked him a series of profound questions to test the true depth of his inner peace. He asked Punna what he would do if the people of Sunaparanta insulted him, cursed at him, and spoke terrible, vicious words to him. Punna smiled warmly and replied that if they insulted him, he would think they were actually very kind people because they did not hit him with their hands. The awakened one then asked what he would do if they did strike him with their hands. Punna answered that he would consider them incredibly kind because they did not throw heavy stones at him. The questions continued to escalate. What if they beat you with heavy sticks? Punna replied that he would feel grateful they did not use sharp weapons. What if they attack you with sharp weapons? Punna said he would be deeply thankful they did not take his life. Finally, the awakened one asked the ultimate question: what if they actually take your life? Punna, with eyes full of absolute, radiant peace, answered that many people wander the world desperately seeking an end to their physical suffering, and he would simply be grateful that these people helped him leave his physical body without him having to search for an end himself. Friends, hearing this magnificent response, the awakened one praised Punna deeply, declaring that he was completely ready to live among the fierce people of Sunaparanta. Punna traveled to that dangerous land, and through his absolute, unshakable gentleness, his profound refusal to react to their anger, and his radiant inner peace, he eventually transformed the entire region. The violent people were completely disarmed by a man who absolutely refused to fight back, a man who met their burning hatred with a cool, refreshing ocean of pure compassion. You encounter your own versions of Sunaparanta in your daily life. You face aggressive co-workers, demanding clients, and sometimes even deeply resentful family members. When they throw harsh words at you, your instinct is to throw harsh words right back. But what if you adopted the magnificent mindset of Punna? What if you looked at a person who is yelling at you and silently thought how wonderful it is that they are only using words? What if you recognize that their aggression is simply a loud cry of their own internal torment? By consciously choosing to gently de-escalate the situation in your own mind, you instantly drain the toxic energy out of the room. You become a powerful, silent transformer of energy, turning the dark poison of the world into clear, harmless water. This practice does not require you to possess a massive, brilliant intellect. So often, you believe that finding peace requires you to read thousands of complex books, understand deep philosophical concepts, and memorize endless spiritual rules. You think that because your mind feels chaotic, you need a highly complicated system to fix it. But true peace is found in profound simplicity. It is found in the quiet, ordinary moments of your life, not in grand intellectual theories. Consider the deeply moving story of a man named Kula Panthaka. He was a gentle soul, but he possessed a very slow, struggling mind. He wanted deeply to follow the path of peace, but he could not memorize even a single, tiny verse of the teachings. He would spend months desperately trying to learn 4 simple lines, but by the time he reached the end, he had completely forgotten the beginning. His own brother, who was a brilliant and highly respected scholar, became terribly frustrated with him. The brother cruelly told Kula Panthaka that he was entirely useless, that he had no place in the spiritual community, and he literally pushed him out the gate, telling him to go back to a normal, worldly life. Kula Panthaka stood outside the heavy wooden gate, weeping bitterly. He felt entirely broken, utterly worthless, and deeply rejected by his own flesh and blood. The awakened one, sensing this immense, crushing sorrow, walked out to the gate and found the weeping man. He did not ask Kula Panthaka to read a book or memorize a new verse. Instead, he handed the sobbing man a small, perfectly clean piece of white cloth. He told Kula Panthaka to sit quietly in the warm morning sun, to gently rub the white cloth with his hands, and to simply repeat the words, "Removal of dirt, removal of dirt." Kula Panthaka sat in the sun and began to rub the cloth. As the hours passed, he noticed that the incredibly pure, white cloth was slowly turning gray and dirty from the sweat and dust on his own hands. In that very specific, entirely simple moment of observation, a profound realization struck him like a flash of brilliant lightning. He saw that just as the clean cloth was stained by the physical dirt, the pure, radiant nature of the mind is stained by the dirt of greed, anger, and ignorance. He realized he did not need to memorize anything to understand the absolute truth of the present moment. By simply being completely present with the small piece of cloth, his mind broke completely free from its heavy chains. The man who could not remember a single sentence became one of the most profoundly wise and peaceful beings in the entire community. Friends, you do not need to figure everything out. You do not need a complicated master plan to find your peace. When you are feeling entirely overwhelmed by the massive demands of your life, when your mind feels slow, exhausted, and completely inadequate, remember the simple white cloth. Just bring your attention to the very next small thing you have to do. If you are drinking tea, just feel the warmth of the cup and taste the tea. If you are folding laundry, just feel the texture of the fabric. You do not have to solve the massive problems of your future right now. Just rub the cloth. Just take the next breath. Your pure, inherent wisdom does not live in your anxious, overthinking brain. It lives in your quiet, direct experience of this exact, beautiful moment. One of the greatest challenges to maintaining this quiet simplicity is the constant friction of living with other human beings. Even when you love people deeply, sharing a space, sharing responsibilities, and sharing a life can create immense, exhausting turbulence. You have different habits, different opinions, and different ways of doing things. Small annoyances can quickly build up into massive walls of resentment. You start keeping score of who does more work, who compromises more, and who is more thoughtful. This silent, bitter accounting destroys the gentle harmony of your home. There is a beautiful historical account of three remarkable friends, Anuruddha, Nandiya, and Kimbila. They lived together in a beautifully secluded area called the Gozinga forest. The awakened one visited them one evening and asked if they were living in true peace, without any quarrels, blending together as perfectly as milk and water. Anuruddha smiled brightly and replied that they were indeed living in absolute, perfect harmony. When asked how they managed to achieve this incredibly rare peace, Anuruddha explained their profound secret. He said that he constantly thought how incredibly fortunate he was to live with such wonderful companions. Because of this deep gratitude, he decided to completely put away his own personal desires and instead live according to the desires of his two friends. Nandiya and Kimbila had independently made the exact same silent vow. If one of them saw that the drinking water was low, he simply fetched more water without saying a word or asking for any praise. If someone made a mess, another silently cleaned it up. They spoke to each other with profound gentleness, and they spent their days in quiet, joyful service to one another. Anuruddha concluded his explanation by saying a truly beautiful phrase: "We have different bodies, but we have exactly one mind." Friends, imagine what your home would feel like if you adopted this magnificent attitude. What if, instead of fiercely demanding that your partner or your children meet all your expectations, you simply looked for small, quiet ways to serve them? What if you stopped keeping score entirely? When you let go of the exhausting need to always have things your own way, a massive amount of tension immediately evaporates from the air. You begin to blend like milk and water. When you do the dishes quietly, without slamming the plates to show everyone how hard you are working, you are actively bringing the peace of the Gozinga forest into your own kitchen. This kind of harmonious living requires you to completely drop your deeply conditioned sense of pride. Pride is a heavy, cold armor that prevents you from feeling the warm touch of genuine connection. You are so terrified of looking weak or being taken advantage of that you constantly assert your dominance, your rightness, and your authority. But true strength is incredibly soft. True strength is having the profound ability to say, "You might be right," or "I am sorry, I made a mistake." These simple, soft words are completely magical. They instantly dismantle the high walls of conflict. When you apologize sincerely, you are not losing a battle. You are bravely choosing peace over pride. You are choosing love over the cold satisfaction of being right. As you walk through this deeply turbulent world, you must also be incredibly mindful of your relationship with time. Modern society suffers from a terrible, chronic sickness, the sickness of constantly rushing. You rush to wake up, you rush to work, you rush through your meals, and you even rush through your moments of relaxation, constantly checking the clock, terrified that you are falling behind. This frantic rushing creates a constant, vibrating anxiety in your nervous system. You feel like you are always late for an incredibly important appointment, even when you have nowhere specific to be. Look closely at a massive, powerful river. It does not rush. It does not panic when it meets a large boulder. It simply flows continuously, persistently, and powerfully around the obstacle. It reaches the vast ocean exactly when it is supposed to. You are also flowing toward your own destination, and panicking will not get you there any faster. It will only make the journey miserable. When you feel the frantic urge to rush, consciously command your body to slow down. Walk a little slower. Speak a little softer. Chew your food more deliberately. By physically slowing down your movements, you send a powerful, biological signal to your anxious brain that you are entirely safe, that there is no tiger chasing you, and that you have all the time in the world to experience this single, precious moment. This slowing down allows you to notice the profound, quiet miracles that are happening all around you every single second. When you are rushing blindly, you completely miss the breathtaking beauty of the world. You miss the way the golden evening light hits the leaves of the trees. You miss the genuine, warm smile of the person handing you your coffee. You miss the soft, rhythmic sound of your own child breathing in their sleep. These are not trivial, unimportant things, friends. These are the actual, profound substance of a meaningful life. If you spend your entire life blindly rushing toward a hypothetical future, you will arrive at the end of your days completely exhausted, realizing that you never actually lived at all. There is a beautiful, gentle teaching about the nature of a flower blooming. A tightly closed bud contains the absolute potential for magnificent beauty, but it cannot be forced open by human hands. If you try to pry the delicate petals apart because you are too impatient to wait, you will completely destroy the flower. The blossom only opens when the conditions are perfectly right, when it has received enough warm sunlight, enough cool water, and enough patient time. You must treat your own heart and your own life with that exact same profound patience. You want all your internal wounds to heal instantly. You want to achieve absolute, unshakable peace by tomorrow afternoon. But healing and growing are organic, mysterious processes. They take time. Some days you will feel like a beautifully open flower, radiating joy and deep understanding. Other days you will feel like a tight, scared, closed bud, retreating from the harsh weather of the world. Both states are entirely natural. Both states are perfectly okay. Do not violently tear at your own petals in a frantic rush to be perfectly healed. Trust the gentle sunlight of your own awareness. Trust the nourishing water of your own self-compassion. You will bloom beautifully, exactly when you are truly ready. And while you patiently wait for your own blooming, you can offer profound comfort to the people around you who are also struggling in the dark. You do not need to be perfectly healed to be a magnificent source of light for someone else. In fact, it is often your own deep experiences of sorrow, heartbreak, and turbulence that make you uniquely qualified to understand and comfort another human being. When you see someone drowning in the exact same dark waters you once navigated, you do not stand safely on the shore and shout complicated instructions at them. You wade into the cold water, you reach out your warm hand, and you softly say, "I know how terrifying this feels. I have been here too. You are not alone." This shared vulnerability is the absolute strongest bridge between human hearts. It dissolves the painful illusion of isolation. The turbulent world wants you to believe that you are completely alone in your struggles, that everyone else is managing perfectly while you are failing miserably. This is a massive, incredibly destructive lie. The person sitting next to you on the train, the person smiling brightly on a screen, the person serving you food, they all carry invisible burdens that would break your heart if you could see them. When you operate from this profound understanding, your daily interactions are transformed. You move through the world with a gentle, inclusive love that demands absolutely nothing in return. This kind of love is not a weak, passive emotion. It is a fierce, indestructible power. It is the power that can look directly into the terrifying face of the world's chaos and softly refuse to be consumed by it. It is the power that allows you to stand in the middle of a raging storm and be the calm, quiet eye of the hurricane. You do not achieve this by magically controlling the wind or stopping the rain. You achieve it by letting go of your frantic resistance to the storm. You let the wind howl, you let the rain fall, and you simply sit quietly, wrapped in the warm blanket of your own steady, breathing presence. Friends, whenever you feel the heavy turbulence rising in your chest, whenever the chaotic news of the world makes your hands shake, I invite you to return to the absolute simplest truth. You are here. You are breathing. The earth is solidly supporting you. The sky is vast and open above you. Everything that is truly real and truly important is happening right now, in this exact fraction of a second. Let the heavy ghosts of the past dissolve into the mist. Let the terrifying phantoms of the future completely evaporate. Come back home to this beautiful, quiet moment. The journey of 1,000 miles truly does begin with a single, mindful step. And every time you gently redirect your scattered attention back to the present, you are taking that magnificent step all over again. You are continuously walking toward a profound, lasting freedom. It is a freedom that nobody can ever take away from you, because it is not dependent on the unpredictable conditions of the external world. It is a freedom born entirely from your own radiant, awakened awareness, a beautiful, eternal flame that burns completely independent of the chaotic winds outside. This internal flame does not require constant fuel from external success or the loud approval of other people. It is fueled entirely by your own quiet awareness and your profound acceptance of reality exactly as it is. But the world will constantly try to blow this gentle flame out. The world will throw urgent emergencies, bitter conflicts, and deep personal losses at your feet, demanding that you panic, demanding that you suffer. One of the most terrifying winds that threatens to extinguish your peace is the wind of profound loss. You love deeply, and because you love deeply, you are completely terrified of losing the people who hold your heart. There is a deeply moving story about a woman named Visakha. She was a woman of immense generosity, a devoted mother and grandmother who possessed a heart large enough to care for an entire city. She had a very large family, and she found her greatest joy in seeing them happy and healthy. But one day, sudden tragedy struck her beautiful home. Her absolutely favorite granddaughter, a bright and joyful young girl, suddenly passed away. Visakha was completely shattered. The pain was so incredibly immense that she could not even wait to dry herself after bathing. She ran out of her large house in the middle of the bright day, her hair completely wet, her clothes clinging to her, tears streaming endlessly down her face. She ran directly to the monastery, desperately seeking some kind of comfort for her completely broken heart. The awakened one saw her weeping bitterly and asked her gently why she was crying with wet hair and soaked garments. She poured out her agonizing grief, explaining the profound tragedy of losing her beloved granddaughter. The teacher looked at her with boundless, quiet compassion and asked a truly profound question. He asked, "Visakha, would you like to have as many children and grandchildren as there are people in this entire great city?" Visakha, thinking of the boundless joy children bring, immediately answered yes, she would love to have that many relatives. The teacher then asked, "And how many people die in this great city every single day?" Visakha paused, realizing the truth, and replied that many people die in the city every day, perhaps 10, perhaps 20, perhaps even more. The teacher then spoke the words that would change her perspective forever. He said, "If you had as many relatives as the people in this city, you would be weeping with wet hair and soaked garments every single day. Those who have 100 dear ones have 100 sorrows. Those who have 10 dear ones have 10 sorrows. Those who have 1 dear one have 1 sorrow. Those who hold on to absolutely nothing have no sorrow at all." Friends, this is an incredibly difficult truth to swallow. You might hear this and think that the teachings are asking you to be cold, to be completely detached, and to absolutely refuse to love anyone so that you can protect yourself from the pain of loss. But that is a profound misunderstanding. The teachings are never asking you to stop loving. They are asking you to stop clinging. There is a massive difference between the two. Love is a beautiful, open hand that gently holds a delicate bird. Clinging is a tight, terrified fist that crushes the bird because it is so afraid the bird will fly away. When you truly love the people in your life, you must also bravely love the undeniable fact that they do not belong to you. They belong to the vast, mysterious flow of the universe. They have their own journeys, their own karma, and their own time to leave this physical world. When you accept this breathtakingly hard truth, your love actually becomes much deeper and much more profound. You stop taking them for granted. You stop wasting precious days arguing over tiny, insignificant things. You look at them across the dinner table and you realize with striking clarity that this specific moment is an absolute miracle, a temporary gift that will never be repeated in exactly the same way. The profound awareness of death does not destroy the joy of life. It actually brings the vibrant colors of life into absolute, stunning focus. Sometimes the heavy turbulence in your mind is not caused by what the world takes away from you, but by the heavy burdens you refuse to set down. You carry immense, crushing guilt for the mistakes you have made in the past. You remember words you spoke in a moment of bitter anger, decisions you made out of blind fear, or times when your actions accidentally caused great harm to someone else. You build a dark prison out of these memories and you punish yourself endlessly, believing that you absolutely do not deserve to experience peace because of what you have done. Consider the heartbreaking and beautiful story of a simple metalworker named Kunda. Kunda was a deeply devoted man who had the absolute honor of inviting the awakened one to his modest home for a meal. He prepared the food with the utmost care, using the finest ingredients he could possibly find, pouring all his love and deep respect into the preparation. He served the meal with immense joy. But shortly after eating the food prepared by Kunda, the teacher became violently ill. The illness was severe, and it ultimately became the physical cause of his final passing from this world. Imagine the absolute, crushing weight that fell entirely upon Kunda. He was completely devastated. The dark, agonizing thought that his gift, his sincere offering of love, had caused the death of the most peaceful being in the world was entirely too much to bear. He was drowning in a turbulent sea of supreme guilt and absolute despair. He believed he had accumulated the worst possible karma in the entire universe. But the awakened one, even while experiencing immense physical pain, possessed a mind of perfect clarity and boundless compassion. He completely understood the terrifying agony that Kunda was experiencing. Before his final passing, he specifically called his attendant close and gave him a very strict, urgent instruction. He told his attendant to go directly to Kunda and deliver a specific message. The message was that there are two specific meals in the world that yield the absolute highest, most supreme merit. The first is the meal eaten right before attaining supreme enlightenment. The second is the final meal eaten right before passing away. He instructed the attendant to tell Kunda that his offering was pure, that his intention was beautiful, and that he should feel immense joy, not agonizing sorrow, because his gift was of the absolute highest value. Friends, look closely at the profound, breathtaking beauty of this action. The outcome of Kunda's action was physically tragic, but the intention behind the action was completely pure. In the deep wisdom of the teachings, your true karma is entirely defined by your intention, not by the unpredictable, uncontrollable results of a highly complex world. You have made mistakes. You have accidentally hurt people while desperately trying to help them. You have failed at important tasks despite giving your absolute best effort. You must release the heavy, suffocating burden of this guilt. You cannot control every single variable in this vast universe. You can only control the purity of your intention in this exact moment. If you acted out of ignorance in the past, forgive yourself gently, knowing that you simply did not have the wisdom you possess today. If you acted out of anger, forgive yourself, knowing that your anger was just a manifestation of your own unhealed pain. You are entirely allowed to set the heavy burden down. You are allowed to take a deep, cleansing breath and start completely over today. Holding on to dark guilt does not make you a more righteous person. It simply makes you a deeply exhausted person who is completely unable to offer light to the world. Another immense source of your daily exhaustion is the deeply ingrained habit of constantly comparing your own completely normal life to the carefully curated highlights of everyone else. You carry small, glowing screens in your pockets that constantly bombard you with images of absolute perfection. You see people with perfect bodies, perfect homes, perfect relationships, and perfect vacations. Your mind instantly looks at your own messy living room, your own complicated relationships, and your own tired body, and a dark, heavy wave of inadequacy washes entirely over you. You feel like you are profoundly failing at the simple task of living. There is an old, deeply wise observation about a certain kind of cowherd. This specific cowherd is hired to take care of a massive, beautiful herd of cows that belongs to someone else. Every single morning, he leads the cows to the most lush, green pastures. He watches them eat the sweet grass, he guides them to the cool, clear streams to drink, and he carefully protects them from dangerous animals. He spends his entire day counting the cows, admiring their health, and ensuring they are perfectly managed. But at the end of the long day, he returns the cows to their wealthy owner. The owner gets to drink the rich, sweet milk, churn the heavy butter, and enjoy the actual nourishment that the cows provide. The hired cowherd simply gets a small, meager wage and goes to sleep completely exhausted, having spent all his energy tending to wealth that is not his own. Friends, when you spend your precious, irreplaceable hours scrolling through screens, constantly admiring and intensely analyzing the lives of other people, you are acting exactly like that hired cowherd. You are exhaustively counting the cows of others. You know exactly what a stranger ate for breakfast on another continent, you know exactly what kind of car your neighbor drives, and you know all about the grand successes of your old classmates. But while you are completely hypnotized by their glowing lives, you are entirely starving your own soul. You are not drinking the sweet milk of your own direct experience. You must bravely reclaim your own attention. Your attention is the absolute most valuable currency you possess. Wherever you direct your attention, your life energy immediately follows. When you constantly direct it outward into the loud, chaotic marketplace of comparison, your inner world becomes a barren, empty desert. Put the screen down. Step away from the endless, exhausting parade of other people's achievements. Return to the quiet, modest beauty of your own actual life. Your life may not be perfectly glamorous, it may not be worthy of public applause, but it is real. It is yours. The simple, warm taste of your own simple meal is infinitely more nourishing than staring endlessly at a picture of a grand banquet belonging to someone else. You also suffer deeply because you completely misunderstand the true nature of wealth and poverty. You live in a society that loudly equates profound peace with massive financial accumulation. You are taught from a very young age that if you simply acquire enough money, enough property, and enough social status, you will finally be safe from the terrifying turbulence of the world. You sacrifice your physical health, your precious time with your family, and your internal peace on the high altar of financial security. Let us look closely at the remarkable life of a man named Anathapindika. He was an incredibly wealthy merchant, known throughout the land for his staggering riches. But he was even more famous for his absolutely boundless generosity. His name literally meant the feeder of the destitute. He used his massive wealth to build grand monasteries, to feed thousands of hungry people, and to actively support the spiritual community with the finest provisions available. He found profound, beautiful joy in giving. But the fast-flowing river of life is entirely unpredictable. Due to a series of sudden, massive natural disasters that destroyed his physical property, and a series of large, unpaid debts from people he had trusted, Anathapindika lost absolutely everything. His vast fortune vanished almost overnight. The great merchant who used to serve the finest, most delicate foods on golden plates was suddenly reduced to eating the most coarse, rough birdseed and sour gruel just to survive. One day, while he was living in this state of profound physical poverty, the awakened one came to visit his modest, crumbling home. Anathapindika offered him the only food he had, the rough, tasteless gruel. As he offered the humble bowl, tears welled up in the eyes of the once great merchant. He looked down in deep shame and softly apologized. He said he was so deeply sorry that he could no longer offer the fine, beautiful meals he used to provide. He felt he had completely lost his immense value because his hands were now entirely empty of gold. The teacher accepted the rough bowl of gruel with absolute, profound reverence. He looked deeply into the tearful eyes of Anathapindika and spoke words of incredible, liberating power. He gently explained that the physical quality of the food absolutely does not matter. It does not matter if the food is served on a golden plate or a cracked clay bowl. It does not matter if it is a rich feast or a handful of dry seeds. The only thing that truly matters in this universe is the boundless, radiant purity of the heart that offers it. He told Anathapindika that his true wealth was never his heavy bags of gold. His true wealth was his unshakable faith, his profound kindness, and his enduring, beautiful spirit of generosity. The world had taken away his fragile, temporary money, but the world had absolutely no power to steal his true, indestructible wealth. Hearing these profound words, Anathapindika realized the absolute truth. His deep shame completely evaporated, replaced by a radiant, soaring joy. He found perfect, unshakable peace right there in the middle of his severe poverty. Friends, what are you truly relying on for your own sense of security? If your peace is entirely dependent on your bank account, your high job title, or your nice house, you will always live in a state of quiet, vibrating terror. Economies crash, companies restructure, and material possessions naturally break down. These things are as fragile as dry autumn leaves blowing in the wind. You must actively cultivate a different kind of wealth, a wealth that can never be repossessed by a bank or destroyed by a storm. You must cultivate the profound wealth of a kind heart. You must cultivate the deep wealth of patience, the wealth of forgiveness, and the incredible wealth of a quiet, mindful presence. When your internal treasury is completely full of these beautiful qualities, you can walk through the most terrifying financial crises or social upheavals with an absolute, quiet dignity. You will know with profound certainty that even if you lose everything you physically own, you will never lose who you truly are. You will always have something incredibly valuable to offer the turbulent world, the calming, healing presence of a truly peaceful human being. This inner wealth is cultivated not through frantic, exhausting effort, but through the gentle, continuous practice of letting go. You are constantly trying to add more things to your life to find happiness. You add more hobbies, more friends, more clothes, and more complicated spiritual routines. But true, profound peace is almost always a process of subtraction. It is about quietly removing the heavy layers of unnecessary desire, dropping the heavy armor of pride, and releasing the tight grip of expectations. Think about how a master sculptor creates a beautiful, majestic statue from a massive, rough block of stone. The sculptor does not add anything to the stone. The sculptor simply uses a sharp chisel to gently and persistently remove everything that is not the beautiful statue. The perfection is already completely hidden inside the rough rock, waiting patiently to be revealed. You are exactly like that block of stone. Your radiant, pure, natural state of profound peace is already completely present inside you. It is just heavily covered by thick layers of anxious thoughts, bitter resentments, and frantic worldly desires. Your gentle awareness is the chisel. Every time you notice a dark, angry thought arising and you consciously choose not to act on it, you chip away a piece of the rough stone. Every time you feel the frantic urge to rush and you consciously choose to take a slow, deep breath instead, you chip away another piece. You do not need to build a new, perfect version of yourself from scratch. You only need to gently remove the heavy layers of confusion that are hiding the beautiful, peaceful being you have always been. This process requires immense, quiet courage. It is actually much easier to stay busy, to keep running, and to keep the mind constantly distracted with loud noise. When you finally stop running and sit quietly, you have to face the uncomfortable silence. You have to face the dark, hidden fears that you have been actively avoiding for years. This is why so many people are completely terrified of simply sitting alone in a quiet room without a screen to look at. The silence acts like a giant, clear mirror, reflecting all the inner turbulence they have been trying to ignore. But friends, you absolutely cannot heal a wound by simply refusing to look at it. You must have the profound courage to sit quietly with your own inner discomfort. When the heavy anxiety rises in your chest during a quiet moment, do not immediately reach for a distraction. Do not run away. Just sit there and feel the physical sensation of the anxiety. Notice how your heart beats faster. Notice how your breathing becomes shallow. Simply observe it with deep, tender compassion, the way a loving mother would observe a frightened, crying child. Do not judge the anxiety. Do not tell yourself that you are weak or failing because you feel afraid. Just offer it your warm, silent presence. When you stop fighting the uncomfortable emotions and simply allow them to exist in the open space of your awareness, a miraculous thing happens. The terrifying emotions slowly begin to lose their power over you. They rise, they peak, and eventually, they softly pass away, exactly like dark clouds moving completely across a vast, blue sky. You realize that you are not the heavy anxiety. You are the vast, untouchable sky that simply holds the anxiety for a brief moment in time. By practicing this gentle, courageous observation, you slowly dismantle the hidden triggers that cause so much turbulence in your daily life. When someone says something that normally makes you instantly angry, you will suddenly find a tiny, quiet space between their words and your reaction. In that tiny, profound space, you have the absolute freedom to choose your response. You are no longer a blind, automatic machine reacting to buttons being pushed. You become a fully conscious, deeply awakened participant in the beautiful, messy dance of life. You can consciously choose to respond to bitter hatred with gentle understanding. You can choose to meet chaotic panic with deep, grounded stillness. This is the absolute highest form of freedom available to a human being. It is the freedom to decide exactly how you will relate to the completely unpredictable events of your life. The world can bring you unexpected pain, but the world cannot force you to suffer. Suffering is the heavy story your mind creates about the pain. When you gently drop the story, the pain simply becomes a pure sensation, entirely manageable and completely temporary. As you continue to walk this path, you will begin to notice a profound shift in your relationship with the deep, quiet rhythm of nature. You spend so much of your life completely disconnected from the earth. You live in bright, artificial lights, walking on hard, artificial floors, breathing conditioned, recycled air. You forget that you are an integral, completely inseparable part of the natural world. This deep disconnection creates a subtle, constant anxiety in your nervous system. You feel lost because you have forgotten your absolute, fundamental roots. Whenever you feel entirely overwhelmed by the sharp, metallic edges of modern life, I invite you to step outside. Go find a large, old tree and simply stand near it. Look closely at its thick, solid trunk. Notice the intricate patterns of the rough bark. Watch how the high branches sway gently in the wind, completely yielding to the invisible force without ever fighting it. The tree does not panic when the cold winter comes and strips away all its beautiful leaves. It simply draws its vital energy deep down into its hidden roots and waits with absolute, silent patience for the inevitable warmth of the spring. You can learn everything you ever need to know about living peacefully from observing that single tree. You can learn how to remain deeply grounded while the chaotic winds of change blow completely around you. You can learn the profound necessity of letting go of the old, dead things in your life to make room for fresh, new growth. You can learn that true strength is not rigid and unbending, but entirely flexible and completely adaptable. You share the exact same life force that flows through the roots of that tree. You are entirely supported by the exact same earth. When you remember this profound connection, the lonely, terrifying illusion of separation completely dissolves. You realize that you are not an isolated, struggling individual fighting against a hostile universe. You are an active, beautiful expression of the universe itself, experiencing life in this specific, unique human form. The heavy burden of having to figure everything out all by yourself is entirely lifted. You can trust the deep, ancient intelligence of life to guide you exactly where you need to go. So breathe deeply, friends. Let the clean air fill your lungs completely. Feel the solid earth supporting your weary feet. You do not need to carry the massive weight of the entire world on your shoulders today. You only need to carry the small, delicate weight of this exact, precious moment. And in this moment, there is a quiet, indestructible peace waiting patiently for you to simply acknowledge its presence, a gentle, healing silence that can wash away the heaviest of sorrows. It is a silence that speaks volumes, whispering the ancient, beautiful truth that you are deeply loved, entirely safe, and profoundly connected to everything around you. You only need to stop running long enough to hear it. This profound silence is not the absence of sound, but rather the absence of internal conflict. It is the beautiful, harmonious state where your mind is no longer desperately fighting against reality. Let us journey back to a night thousands of years ago to understand the heavy burden of fighting reality. There was a young man named Yasa. He had absolutely everything a person could ever possibly want in the material world. He lived in 3 different, magnificent palaces, one carefully designed for each season of the year. He wore the finest, most delicate silk, ate the most exquisite food, and was surrounded by continuous, dazzling entertainment day and night. He was the absolute, perfect picture of worldly success and immense privilege. Yet, one night, he woke up suddenly in the middle of his opulent palace. He looked around at his sleeping attendants, the scattered musical instruments, the remnants of the grand feast, and a sudden, crushing feeling of utter disgust and deep suffocation washed entirely over him. The immense wealth and the constant noise suddenly felt like a tight, suffocating trap. The physical comforts could no longer hide the profound, aching emptiness in his soul. He put on his golden slippers and walked straight out of the heavily guarded palace into the dark night, crying out loudly in deep, genuine agony. He cried that he was terribly distressed, that he was completely oppressed by it all. He wandered blindly into the nearby forest, desperately gasping for air, trying to escape the heavy, golden cage of his own life. There, in the quiet, cool hours just before dawn, he stumbled upon the awakened one pacing gently in the fresh air. Hearing the young man's agonizing, desperate cry, the teacher stopped, looked at the incredibly wealthy, completely broken young man, and spoke words of pure, refreshing water. He softly said to Yasa that right here, there is absolutely no distress. Right here, there is absolutely no oppression. He invited the wealthy young man to simply sit down and rest. Friends, those simple, quiet words changed Yasa completely. Just hearing that a place of non-distress actually existed in this turbulent world was enough to calm his frantic, racing heart. He took off his heavy golden slippers, sat down on the simple, bare earth, and for the first time in his entire privileged life, he felt a profound, genuine peace. He realized with absolute clarity that the heavy, golden chains of his wealth, his status, and his endless desires were exactly what was causing his deep suffocation. By stepping out of the palace and sitting quietly in the forest, he stepped out of his suffering entirely. You might not live in 3 massive palaces, but you understand Yasa completely, do you not? You have felt that exact same suffocation in the middle of the night. You look at your incredibly busy life, your accumulated possessions, your endless calendar of obligations, and you silently scream in the dark that you are oppressed by it all. You feel entirely trapped by the very things you worked so incredibly hard to build. The modern world is a grand, noisy palace of endless entertainment and constant, exhausting consumption, but it so often leaves the human soul feeling incredibly empty and terribly tired. You must know that the quiet, peaceful clearing in the forest still exists for you today. It is not a physical place you have to travel thousands of miles to find. It is a quiet state of mind you can actively access right this very second. You simply have to be willing to take off your own heavy golden slippers. You have to bravely step away from the endless demands of your ego, the constant need to prove yourself, and sit quietly in the simple, unadorned reality of the present moment. When you stop demanding that the world entertain you and fulfill every single one of your desires, the profound feeling of oppression immediately lifts. You suffer so deeply because you desperately try to control the massive, unpredictable ocean of life. You mistakenly think that if you just swim hard enough, worry long enough, and plan perfectly enough, you can entirely dictate the direction of the massive, universal currents. You want to control what other people think of you. You want to control the exact outcome of your career. You want to control the health of your physical body. But trying to control the uncontrollable is the absolute fastest path to total mental exhaustion. There is a wonderful, highly instructive account of a king named Udina. He was fiercely, intensely possessive of a deeply beautiful, incredibly rare fragrant flower that grew in his royal garden. He posted heavily armed guards around this single flower day and night. He wanted to preserve its absolute perfection forever, keeping it entirely for his own enjoyment. But a sudden, fierce, completely unpredictable storm rolled through the capital city one afternoon. The heavy, driving rain and the brutal, howling wind completely destroyed the royal garden, including the highly prized, heavily guarded flower. The king was absolutely furious. His anger burned like a massive fire. He wanted to somehow punish the wind. He wanted to execute the terrified guards for failing to protect the delicate plant against the massive storm. He was completely consumed by a dark, burning rage simply because his grand illusion of absolute control had been suddenly and violently shattered. A wise, gentle advisor approached the furious king and gently asked him a very strange question. He asked the king if he could command the bright sun to stop setting in the evening. The king angrily replied that no man could possibly do such a thing. The advisor then asked if the king could command the heavy rain to fall back up into the dark clouds. The king impatiently said that was entirely impossible. The advisor smiled softly and said that trying to prevent a delicate, fragile flower from being destroyed by a massive storm is exactly the same impossible task. The king's immense, burning suffering did not actually come from the loss of the flower. It came entirely from his absurd, rigid demand that the entire vast universe obey his personal, completely temporary wishes. You do the exact same thing, friends. You try to build massive, protective walls around your happiness, your health, and your loved ones. You honestly believe that your intense, sleepless worrying is somehow actively protecting them. But worrying is just praying for exactly what you absolutely do not want to happen. It does not prevent the dark storm from arriving. It simply ruins the beautiful, sunny days you have right now. You cannot control the weather of the world. You must learn the profound, beautiful art of yielding. Yielding is absolutely not giving up. It is not becoming a weak, passive victim of terrible circumstances. Yielding is the profound, deep wisdom of recognizing the immense, unstoppable forces of nature and consciously choosing to align yourself with them instead of fighting a bitter, exhausting, losing battle. When the heavy, terrifying winds of change blow through your life, do not stand rigid and stiff like a dry, brittle branch. If you do, you will surely break into 1,000 pieces. Instead, you must learn to bend gracefully like the fresh, green grass. The grass survives the most terrifying, violent hurricanes because it knows exactly how to bow down completely to the wind, letting the danger pass over it, and then quietly standing back up when the storm has cleared. To bend like the grass, you must be willing to let go of the heavy identities that make you so rigid. Let us look closely at the beautiful, inspiring example of Mahakassapa. He was born into immense, staggering wealth, inheriting a vast fortune that easily rivaled the riches of powerful kings. Yet, he saw clearly the heavy, crushing burden of managing all that endless property. He deeply understood that extreme wealth often breeds intense anxiety, endless bitter disputes, and a profound lack of true freedom. He made the radical choice to leave it all entirely behind to seek the ultimate, quiet truth of existence. One day, he met the awakened one walking quietly on a dusty, unpaved road. Mahakassapa was wearing incredibly expensive, exquisitely woven robes, while the teacher was wearing simple, patched, discarded rags gathered from a dusty heap. Feeling a sudden surge of profound, overwhelming devotion and deep respect, Mahakassapa took off his luxurious, soft robes, folded them incredibly carefully, and offered them as a comfortable, clean seat for the teacher. In a magnificent, deeply symbolic gesture of spiritual exchange, the teacher accepted the soft, expensive robes but then immediately offered his own rough, dirty, patched rags to Mahakassapa. For any ordinary, proud person, trading expensive, beautiful silk for discarded, dirty rags would be considered a supreme, unforgivable insult. But Mahakassapa accepted the rough rags with tears of profound, overwhelming joy streaming down his face. He wore those patched, humble rags with immense dignity for the rest of his long life. Why would he do this? Because those rough rags represented absolute, untethered freedom. They represented a simple life completely unburdened by the heavy, exhausting expectations of high society. He gladly traded his heavy, suffocating wealth and his proud social status for the light, joyful, beautiful freedom of having absolutely nothing left to fiercely protect. He became entirely empty, and therefore, he became entirely full of peace. You absolutely do not need to give away all your belongings, leave your comfortable home, or wear patched rags to find this exact same freedom. But you absolutely do need to closely examine the heavy, invisible robes you are wearing every single day right now. You wear the heavy, demanding robe of your professional title. You wear the tight, restrictive robe of your social standing. You wear the exhausting, metallic robe of needing to always appear perfectly strong and completely in control. These invisible robes are slowly suffocating your bright spirit. They make you incredibly defensive, constantly guarded, and easily offended by the smallest comments. If someone questions your intelligence, criticizes your hard work, or simply disagrees with your opinion, you feel entirely destroyed and deeply angry. Why? Because you have completely confused your beautiful, inherent, indestructible worth with these temporary, artificial garments. You think that if your title is attacked, your actual soul is being attacked. Please, friends, practice taking these heavy robes off at the end of every single day. When you walk through the front door of your home, leave your important titles, your work stress, and your defensive armor outside on the porch. Just be a simple, breathing human being. Be a person who deeply enjoys the warmth of a simple cup of tea, who laughs freely at a silly joke, who feels the soft, comforting fur of a pet. When you intentionally strip away the heavy, complicated layers of identity, you instantly discover a deeply peaceful, unshakable core that absolutely cannot be threatened by any worldly loss or any harsh criticism. This unshakable core is completely vital because the world is undeniably full of physical and emotional discomfort. This is a fundamental, inescapable truth of human existence. But there is a second, equally important, deeply empowering truth. While you cannot always avoid the painful discomfort, you have the absolute, profound ability to choose exactly how you relate to that discomfort. Let us talk deeply about the profound difference between raw, unavoidable pain and heavy, optional suffering. Imagine you are walking barefoot in a beautiful, dense forest and you accidentally step on a very sharp, hidden thorn. The physical pain is immediate, sharp, and intense. That is the first, unavoidable layer of the experience. It is simply a biological signal. But what exactly happens next in your turbulent mind? You immediately start to feel incredibly angry. You bitterly blame yourself for being so foolish and careless. You loudly blame the entire forest for having dangerous thorns. You start frantically worrying that the small wound will become terribly infected, that you will lose your foot entirely, that you will never be able to walk again, and that your entire life is completely ruined. You create a massive, terrifying, catastrophic story around a single, tiny, sharp thorn. The raw physical pain of the thorn is entirely natural and completely brief. But the burning anger, the bitter blame, and the terrifying, exhausting story are completely optional. They are incredibly heavy burdens that you voluntarily pick up and choose to carry on your shoulders. The ancient teachings remind us constantly to simply, gently remove the sharp thorn, carefully clean the small wound, and completely, intentionally drop the terrifying story. When you experience a difficult, overwhelming emotion in your daily life, like deep, heavy sadness or sharp, breathless anxiety, you must treat it exactly like that physical thorn. Acknowledge its presence honestly. Feel its sharp, uncomfortable edge without running away. But absolutely refuse to write a massive, tragic, endless novel about it. Do not tell yourself that you will always be this sad, that your terrible anxiety will completely ruin your entire future, or that you are entirely broken. Just softly say to yourself that sadness is simply visiting the guest house of your mind right now. By keeping the experience completely simple, factual, and anchored in the present, you successfully prevent the raw, temporary pain from multiplying into heavy, unbearable, lifelong suffering. You live your entire life surrounded by people who are also stepping on invisible, sharp thorns every single day. Their unhealed wounds cause them to act out in strange, confusing, and sometimes deeply cruel ways. When someone is surprisingly sharp with you, when they speak words that sting your heart, you must remember with profound compassion that their harsh sharpness is almost always a clumsy, desperate reaction to their own deeply hidden pain. Let us look at a truly beautiful, incredibly moving account of a woman named Patakara. She experienced a level of sudden tragedy that is almost entirely incomprehensible to the normal human mind. Through a series of horrific, unpredictable, cascading accidents over just a few short days, she lost her beloved husband, both of her precious young children, her aging parents, and her brothers. Her entire family, her entire support system, her entire known world, was completely and violently wiped out. The sheer, crushing, unimaginable weight of this sudden, massive loss completely broke her fragile mind. She wandered the busy streets of the city entirely naked, weeping hysterically, completely lost in a dark, terrifying ocean of pure, unadulterated agony. People threw hard stones at her, calling her a dangerous madwoman, violently driving her away from their clean, safe homes. They only saw the terrifying chaos on the surface, they did not see the entirely broken heart underneath. But one day, in her blind wandering, she approached a quiet place where a gathering was taking place. The awakened one saw her stumbling forward. He looked entirely past the dirty, matted hair, the shocking nakedness, and the terrifying, loud madness. He saw a deeply broken, profoundly suffering, completely exhausted human being who was desperately in need of a safe harbor. While others quickly tried to chase her away in fear and disgust, he gently but firmly told them to let her approach safely. As she drew near, weeping and trembling, he spoke to her with a voice carrying the absolute, fathomless depth of universal compassion. He did not yell at her to behave. He softly, beautifully told her to recover her presence of mind. He told her to find her quiet, internal center. Friends, the sheer, radiant power of that absolute, unconditional acceptance and profound calmness pierced straight through the dark, heavy clouds of her madness. For the first time in weeks, she suddenly realized her condition. Someone quietly handed her a cloak to cover herself, and she fell completely to the ground, weeping bitterly, pouring out the agonizing, heartbreaking story of her massive, unimaginable losses. The teacher absolutely did not offer her empty, meaningless platitudes. He did not say that everything would miraculously be all right or that time heals all wounds. He simply, gently pointed out the profound, undeniable truth of the fragile human condition. He explained that no loved one, no matter how cherished, can ever be a true, permanent refuge from the universal reality of death and continuous change. He guided her gently to see that every single human being experiences this profound, terrifying loss eventually, and that true, lasting safety can only be found by purifying her own mind and finding the unshakable, eternal refuge completely within herself. Through this gentle, honest, profoundly compassionate guidance, Padikara's shattered mind was completely restored. She eventually transformed her massive, terrifying grief into a profound, driving force for deep spiritual liberation. She eventually became one of the most highly respected, profoundly wise, and deeply peaceful teachers in the entire community, using her own deep understanding of absolute tragedy to help countless other people navigate their own dark oceans of sorrow. You may never experience a tragedy as massive and sweeping as Padikara's, but you absolutely know the terrifying feeling of having your familiar world turned completely upside down. You know the exact feeling of the solid ground suddenly dropping out from beneath your feet when a long-term relationship painfully ends, when a terrible medical diagnosis is unexpectedly given, or when a long-held, cherished dream completely shatters into dust. In those incredibly terrifying, breathless moments, your mind desperately wants to completely detach from reality. You want to run far away, hide in a dark room, and never, ever face the cruel world again. But in those exact, agonizing moments, you must remember the gentle, powerful instruction given to Padikara. Recover your presence of mind. Bring your scattered, panicked attention back to the simple feeling of the breath moving in your chest. Bring your attention back to the physical, solid sensations in your hands and feet. When the terrifying, loud storm of massive grief or blinding anxiety is raging inside you, your only safe, secure anchor is the immediate present moment. Do not let your panicked mind project the current, unbearable pain entirely into the distant future. Do not tell yourself that you will feel this terrible, suffocating weight forever. You will not. The human heart is incredibly, miraculously, breathtakingly resilient. It has the profound, natural capacity to break completely open, and then slowly, beautifully, and quietly heal itself, becoming even larger, stronger, and far more compassionate than it ever was before the break. This profound healing absolutely requires immense patience and deep rest. But you push yourself so incredibly hard, friends. You live in a demanding culture that actively worships endless, exhausting productivity. You feel a deep, burning, irrational guilt if you spend a single afternoon simply resting, looking quietly at the moving clouds, or enjoying a warm cup of tea without simultaneously answering messages or planning tomorrow. You have somehow convinced yourself that your inherent, absolute worth is completely tied to how much you can constantly produce, achieve, and frantically cross off your daily, endless list. This is a terribly exhausting, profoundly damaging way to live your one precious life. Let us consider the beautiful, deeply practical lesson of a skilled, dedicated archer. A young, passionate student went to a legendary, highly respected master archer to deeply learn the profound, ancient art of the bow. The student was incredibly eager to prove himself. He practiced relentlessly from early sunrise to late sunset, shooting hundreds of arrows every single day without ever taking a break. His fingers bled, his arms ached terribly, and his eyes grew incredibly blurry from the constant, intense strain. But he noticed a terrible thing: the harder and longer he practiced, the worse his aim actually became. His arrows flew wildly off target, completely missing the mark. He became deeply, bitterly frustrated and finally threw his heavy wooden bow violently onto the ground in bitter despair, completely ready to quit the practice entirely. The old, peaceful master walked over silently, picked up the discarded bow, and examined it very closely. He then looked directly at the exhausted, weeping student and asked a very simple, practical question. He asked what exactly happens to a beautiful wooden bow if you keep it strung tightly all the time, day and night, without ever unstringing it to let it rest. The student, wiping his tears, replied that the wood would eventually lose all its natural spring, it would become permanently warped, and the bow would be completely ruined and entirely useless. The master smiled gently and nodded in agreement. He explained that the delicate human mind and the physical body are exactly the same as that wooden bow. If you constantly keep yourself strung tightly with intense stress, constant, demanding work, and never-ending worry, you will completely lose your natural, beautiful resilience. Your aim in life, your ability to make clear decisions, and your capacity to love will become wildly inaccurate because you are constantly operating from a place of deep, structural, profound exhaustion. The master strictly instructed the student to completely unstring the heavy bow whenever he was not actively, intentionally shooting. He told the young man to rest his aching arms, to walk quietly and aimlessly in the peaceful woods, to just listen to the singing birds, and to completely forget about the target and the arrows for a few hours every single day. When the student finally learned to perfectly balance his intense, necessary focus with profound, entirely necessary rest, his aim miraculously became absolutely perfect. Friends, you absolutely must learn to consciously unstring your own bow. Resting is absolutely not a lazy, selfish luxury reserved for a few privileged people. Resting is an absolute, non-negotiable biological and spiritual necessity. When you sit quietly in your garden doing absolutely nothing, when you take a slow, unhurried walk without constantly checking your phone, when you simply close your tired eyes and listen to beautiful, calming music, you are absolutely not wasting precious time. You are doing the vital, profound, invisible work of restoring your internal, emotional resilience. You are gently untying the tight, painful knots in your overloaded nervous system. You are allowing the deep, muddy waters of your busy mind to settle completely so that you can finally see clearly again. Do absolutely not wait until you are completely broken, burned out, and physically sick to finally give yourself permission to rest. You must actively build soft, quiet, protective moments of complete non-doing into every single day of your life. Guard those quiet moments fiercely against the endless demands of the world. They are the sacred, beautiful sanctuary where your tired soul goes to heal. When you honor your deep need for rest, you return to your work and your relationships with a completely renewed, vibrant energy, a bright, clear focus that allows you to completely engage with the world without being entirely consumed by its endless, chaotic demands. You become a person who can step into a tense, chaotic room and instantly lower the temperature, simply by the profound, quiet quality of your gentle presence. This radiant, unshakable presence is the absolute greatest gift you can possibly offer to your family, your community, and this deeply hurting, deeply beautiful world. Society constantly measures you by exactly what you produce, what you own, and how perfectly you look. It creates a cruel, exhausting, invisible hierarchy of human value. If you fall to the absolute bottom of this wobbly ladder, due to sudden illness, devastating financial ruin, or a complete lack of social standing, you feel entirely crushed. You feel that you have completely failed at the very task of existence. Consider the deeply moving, profoundly inspiring life of a man named Buddha. He suffered from a terrible, severely disfiguring disease. In his ancient society, this condition meant absolute, terrifying isolation. He was an absolute outcast, forced to wear dirty, discarded rags, constantly warning people of his approach so they could flee in disgust, completely starved of warm human touch and basic human dignity. He lived his entire, painful life firmly believing he was fundamentally cursed, entirely worthless, and deeply broken beyond all repair. One day, while wandering the dusty streets, he saw a massive, quiet crowd of people sitting together in a beautiful, shaded grove. Because he was always physically starving, his immediate, desperate thought was that rich food was being freely distributed. He crept slowly, fearfully to the very edge of the crowd, hiding his damaged face in deep, burning shame, hoping to just gather a few discarded scraps to survive another painful day. But there was no physical food being handed out. Instead, the awakened one was sharing the profound, infinitely nourishing food of the teachings. Sitting there quietly in the dirt, covered in painful, visible sores, Buddha simply listened. The teacher, possessing absolute, flawless awareness, scanned the massive, silent crowd and instantly saw this terrified, broken man hiding in the deep shadows at the very edge. With boundless, beautifully targeted compassion, the teacher spoke directly to the aching heart of Buddha. He spoke clearly about the undeniable, profound truth that physical suffering completely fails to define the absolute purity of the human mind. He gently explained that a person is absolutely not made noble by their robust physical health, their heavy bags of gold, or their high social class, but entirely by the gentle, beautiful purity of their heart. As Suppabutta listened deeply to these revolutionary, earth-shattering words, a profound, blinding light broke completely through the dark, heavy clouds of his lifelong, crushing shame. He realized with absolute, breathtaking clarity that his terrible physical disease was simply a temporary condition of his fragile body, completely separate from the radiant, untouched, eternal perfection of his inner awareness. In that single, magnificent, quiet moment, sitting entirely unnoticed in the dirty dust, the poorest, most utterly despised man in the entire city became entirely free. His deep, lifelong psychological suffering completely vanished, instantly replaced by an unshakable, majestic, quiet peace. Friends, you may not carry a visible, physical disease that makes society loudly reject you, but how many invisible, painful sores of shame do you carry quietly in your own heart? How often do you silently tell yourself that you are fundamentally unworthy of true love because you failed terribly at a relationship, completely lost a career, or simply do not look like the perfect, highly edited images flashing on your bright screens? You hide nervously at the edge of your own beautiful life, deeply ashamed, secretly believing you only deserve the leftover, meager scraps of joy. You must absolutely stop believing this cruel, exhausting, completely fabricated lie. Your true, beautiful value is absolutely not determined by the fickle, incredibly shallow judgments of a confused society. Your true value is inherent, eternal, and completely untouchable by any worldly standard. When you finally recognize the radiant, pure nature of your own awareness, the heavy, suffocating burden of societal shame falls away completely. You can stand tall and breathe deeply in the absolute truth of your own magnificent being, completely regardless of what the noisy, chaotic world thinks of you. To further understand this profound, necessary freedom from societal labels, look very closely at the remarkable, inspiring story of Upali. He was a humble, quiet barber, born directly into the lowest possible social class, spending his long days quietly cutting the hair of proud, wealthy, highly privileged royal princes. He was completely conditioned from birth to believe that he was permanently inferior, destined only to serve silently in the background. When a group of these wealthy, powerful princes decided to completely leave their luxurious palaces to seek profound spiritual freedom, Upali traveled with them to the very edge of the dark forest to bid them a sad, tearful farewell. Right before entering the deep forest, the princes took off all their heavy, priceless golden jewelry, their sparkling diamonds, and their rich, delicate silk garments. They handed this massive, unimaginable fortune directly to Upali, telling him to return to the grand city and live comfortably for the rest of his days. Upali stood quietly at the edge of the trees, holding a massive fortune that could instantly elevate his social status, buy him grand palaces, and completely erase his lifelong poverty. But as he looked closely at the sparkling, heavy jewels, a profound, startling realization hit him like a lightning bolt. He saw clearly that the princes were completely throwing away this massive, highly desired wealth because they deeply understood it was a heavy, dangerous burden that only brought intense fear, endless greed, and profound suffering. Upali asked himself a deeply wise, completely transformative question. If this sparkling wealth was a deadly, poisonous snake for the educated, powerful princes, why should he, a humble, simple barber, voluntarily wrap this exact same poisonous snake tightly around his own neck? In an act of absolute, breathtaking courage, Upali hung the priceless, sparkling jewels casually on the branch of a nearby tree, leaving them completely behind in the dust, and ran swiftly into the dark forest to join the princes on the quiet path of peace. The princes, deeply recognizing his incredible, pure wisdom and his profoundly courageous heart, insisted that Upali be officially accepted into the spiritual community completely before them. By doing this beautiful, radical act, the proud royals completely destroyed the rigid, cruel class system that had governed their entire lives. The humble, quiet barber instantly became their senior, their highly respected teacher. Upali eventually became the absolute foremost expert in the ethical, peaceful guidelines of the entire community, completely revered and bowed to by the very kings and princes he used to quietly serve. Friends, what kind of heavy, poisonous jewels are you carrying right now? Are you desperately, breathlessly holding on to the shiny pursuit of vast wealth, high status, and worldly power, completely believing they will miraculously cure your deep, internal anxiety? You sacrifice your quiet, peaceful evenings, your physical health, and your precious, fleeting family time just to accumulate more shiny, temporary things. You must realize deeply that true, lasting elevation absolutely does not come from climbing the stressful, wobbly, endless ladder of societal success. True elevation comes directly from the brave, radical act of dropping the heavy burdens entirely. It comes directly from realizing that you are already completely whole, exactly as you are, without ever needing to aggressively prove your worth through endless, exhausting accumulation. The world will constantly, relentlessly try to hand you very heavy things. It will hand you crushing expectations, bitter criticisms, and deeply unfair, painful circumstances. When you inevitably encounter these deeply unfair, hurtful people, your immediate instinct is to violently pick up the heavy, burning weapon of anger. You feel entirely, absolutely justified in your rage. You replay the painful injustice over and over in your tired mind, completely convinced that your burning, loud anger is a righteous, protective shield. But anger is absolutely never a true shield. It is a slow, deeply consuming poison that entirely destroys the vessel that holds it. Let us fully explore the magnificent, awe-inspiring account of a massive, terrifying elephant named Nalajirai. This specific elephant was incredibly powerful, deeply aggressive, and had been intentionally, cruelly fed intoxicating alcohol to make it absolutely furious and completely uncontrollable. It was intentionally released into the narrow, highly crowded streets of the city with the specific, cruel intention of causing terrible, violent harm to the awakened one, who was walking peacefully with his quiet followers. As the massive, drunk, completely enraged elephant charged rapidly down the narrow street, violently tearing down solid walls, screaming fiercely, and causing absolute, panicked terror among the citizens, the followers begged the teacher to run away quickly, to hide safely inside a building, to actively protect himself from the certain, violent death thundering heavily toward them. But the teacher absolutely did not run. He did not show a single, tiny trace of panic or fear. He did not pick up a heavy stick or a sharp weapon, and he absolutely did not respond to the terrifying, violent aggression with his own anger. He simply stood completely still in the middle of the dusty street and radiated an absolute, overwhelming, boundless wave of pure loving kindness directly toward the furious, charging animal. This was absolutely not a weak, passive, cowardly emotion. This was a solid, undeniable force of pure love, infinitely stronger than any physical, sharp weapon in existence. As the massive, Angry elephant charged closer and closer, preparing to violently strike. It suddenly hit this invisible, profound, solid wall of absolute peace. The furious animal, completely confused by the total, pure absence of fear and hatred in the quiet man standing before it, abruptly stopped its terrifying, destructive charge. The heavy, alcohol-induced rage completely evaporated from its dark mind. The massive, dangerous creature slowly lowered its heavy head, walked gently and quietly forward, and bowed down completely in the soft dust at the very feet of the peaceful teacher. Friends, there are completely enraged, dangerous elephants charging rapidly down the narrow streets of your own life every single day. They come crashing in the form of highly aggressive messages, intensely angry drivers on the road, bitter, screaming arguments with your partner, and the chaotic, terrifying, violent news of the world. Your immediate, deeply conditioned response is almost always to panic wildly, to run away in deep fear, or to fiercely fight back with your own matching, burning anger. But violently fighting a raging elephant with more rage only creates a massive, highly destructive war that completely ruins the entire, beautiful city of your mind. You absolutely must learn the profound, magical, ancient art of standing completely still. When someone attacks you viciously with their bitter, sharp words, do not raise your voice in return. Do not quickly type a furious, sarcastic, biting reply. Take a deep, incredibly slow breath and consciously, deliberately generate a solid field of calm, quiet understanding. You must recognize deeply that the person yelling at you so bitterly is exactly like the elephant Nalajairai. They are completely intoxicated by their own massive stress, their own deep, hidden fears, and their own completely unhealed childhood trauma. They are suffering deeply, and their loud, frightening anger is just a blind, clumsy, terrifying expression of that profound, internal suffering. When you intentionally meet their burning, destructive fire with the cool, refreshing, deep water of your own unshakable presence, you completely and utterly disarm them. You absolutely do not need to say a single, clever word. Your steady, peaceful, grounded energy is absolutely enough to stop the heavy charge. This takes incredible, monumental, daily practice. You will fail many times. You will get angry, you will unfortunately yell back, and you will quickly feel the bitter, hot sting of deep regret. When that inevitably happens, you absolutely must offer yourself that exact same boundless, gentle compassion. Forgive yourself very quickly, dust yourself off gently, and simply try again the very next time the terrifying elephant charges. Sometimes you mistakenly think that to deeply practice this kind of profound peace, you absolutely must completely abandon your normal, messy life. You think you urgently need to quit your stressful, demanding job, entirely leave your noisy, crowded city, and move to a quiet, completely isolated mountain to simply meditate in silence all day long. But this is a grand, beautiful, deeply seductive illusion. The absolute best, most effective place to practice true peace is right in the exact middle of the messiest, most highly complicated parts of your daily life. Consider the deeply inspiring, incredibly practical life of a man named Siddha. He was absolutely not a quiet, wandering monk. He was a very busy, highly successful, heavily burdened merchant, a wealthy householder with a very large family, massive, complicated business responsibilities, and a very demanding, completely exhausting daily schedule. Yet, despite his incredibly busy worldly life, he successfully achieved a level of profound, unshakable peace that easily rivaled the most advanced, highly secluded monks in the deep forest. He completely and profoundly understood that true, lasting spiritual practice absolutely does not happen in a quiet, hidden cave. It happens directly in the noisy, crowded, highly stressful marketplace. Siddha actively used his daily, frustrating interactions with difficult, demanding customers, the heavy responsibility of managing his large family, and the massive, crushing stress of his complex business as the actual, living material for his daily practice. When a massive, important business deal completely failed, causing immense financial loss, he absolutely did not panic or fall into deep, bitter despair. He consciously used it as a profound, beautiful opportunity to deeply practice letting go of his tight attachment to specific outcomes. When a jealous person insulted him loudly in the busy market, he used it to practice deep, unconditional, quiet forgiveness. He entirely transformed his stressful, demanding life into a magnificent, continuous, living meditation. He became so profoundly wise and deeply peaceful that senior, highly respected monks would actually travel very long distances just to sit quietly and learn directly from this busy, hard-working, ordinary merchant. Friends, your busy, noisy office, your chaotic, messy kitchen, and your deeply frustrating daily commute are your very own personal, profound, absolutely perfect training grounds. Do not constantly, desperately wish for an easier, completely problem-free life. Wish deeply for a stronger, more resilient, vastly more open heart. When you are standing completely exhausted in an incredibly long, deeply frustrating line at the busy grocery store, and your feet are aching terribly, and you are in a massive, panicked rush to get home, do not immediately pull out your glowing screen to simply escape the highly uncomfortable moment. Consciously use that exact, deeply annoying moment to practice absolute, unshakable patience. Feel the solid ground firmly beneath your tired feet. Notice the tired, equally frustrated faces of the ordinary people standing around you. Breathe very deeply directly into the completely ordinary frustration and simply watch it slowly, beautifully dissolve into a quiet, peaceful, spacious acceptance. When you practice exactly like this, the mundane, incredibly boring line at the store instantly becomes a profoundly sacred space. Washing the greasy, dirty dishes becomes a profound, beautiful act of spiritual cleansing. Listening patiently to a loudly complaining, deeply negative coworker becomes an act of highest, divine, beautiful compassion. You completely erase the false, highly stressful boundary between your spiritual life and your ordinary, daily life. Your entire existence gracefully becomes one seamless, beautiful, continuous flow of awakened, quiet presence. You absolutely no longer have to desperately run away from your messy life to find peace, because you are actively, consciously creating peace in every single, ordinary action you take. But to truly live this beautiful way, you must completely abandon the heavy, exhausting, entirely impossible burden of absolute perfectionism. You are so incredibly, terribly hard on yourself. You hold on to this completely unrealistic, rigid, punishing image of exactly what a peaceful, spiritual person should look like. You falsely think you should never, ever feel anxious, you should absolutely never lose your temper, and you should always be perfectly smiling, calm, and serene. This is a terrifying, utterly impossible standard that only creates massive, deeply hidden, toxic shame. You are a beautiful, highly complex, entirely messy, completely human being. You are absolutely going to have days where you feel completely lost and utterly overwhelmed. You are going to have incredibly difficult moments where you cry uncontrollably for absolutely no logical reason at all. You are going to suddenly say harsh things that you deeply, bitterly regret seconds later. This absolutely does not mean you are failing at life. It simply, beautifully means you are alive, participating fully in the human experience. The true path to lasting, deep peace is absolutely not about desperately, surgically eliminating all your human flaws. It is entirely about holding your deep flaws with absolute, tender, unconditional, warm love. Think of a deeply beautiful, ancient clay bowl that has been accidentally dropped and violently broken into several jagged, sharp pieces. An ordinary, impatient person would look quickly at the broken pieces, loudly call it completely ruined, and aggressively throw it straight into the dark trash. But a master, highly skilled artist gently takes those broken, jagged pieces and incredibly carefully glues them back together using pure, shining, highly valuable liquid gold. The bowl is absolutely no longer perfect in the original, unblemished sense, but it has magically become infinitely more beautiful, entirely unique, and deeply valuable exactly because of its obvious brokenness. The bright, golden cracks tell a profound, entirely beautiful story of violently breaking, bravely surviving, and becoming magnificently whole again. Your fragile, beating heart is exactly like that beautiful, ancient clay bowl, friends. Every single time you experience deep, crushing grief, profound, bitter disappointment, or terrifying, public failure, a delicate piece of your heart breaks completely off. But when you gently apply the shining, golden glue of warm self-compassion, gentle, quiet forgiveness, and mindful, steady awareness, you slowly, carefully put yourself back together. You are absolutely, undeniably not ruined. The exact places where you have been deeply broken are the exact, beautiful places where your deepest, most profound compassion enters. A completely sheltered person who has absolutely never experienced deep, terrifying sorrow cannot ever truly understand the profound sorrow of another human being. Your deep wounds, your messy flaws, and your heavy, exhausting struggles are the exact, beautiful things that give you the profound, massive capacity to truly love the hurting world deeply. Another massive, terrifying wave that constantly threatens to capsize your small, fragile boat of peace is the terrifying, vast, completely unknown future. You spend an enormous, entirely unhealthy amount of your precious, limited energy desperately trying to predict exactly what will happen next month, next year, or 10 long years from now. You lie wide awake staring blankly at the dark ceiling, frantically mapping out hundreds of different, terrifying scenarios, completely trying to prepare for every single possible, catastrophic disaster. This is a completely exhausting, utterly useless, entirely painful mental exercise. Consider the deeply ancient, profound, quiet wisdom of a simple, hard-working farmer who lived in a very small, remote, dusty village. One day, the farmer's absolutely only horse, which he desperately, urgently needed to plow his heavy fields, completely broke its tied rope and ran far away deep into the wild, dangerous mountains. All his anxious neighbors rushed over immediately, loudly shaking their heads in deep sympathy, crying out about what a terrible, devastating, entirely tragic stroke of bad luck this was. The farmer simply smiled calmly, took a slow breath, and softly said, "We will see." A few long days later, the strong horse suddenly returned, but it absolutely did not come back alone. It proudly brought with it a magnificent, incredibly powerful, highly valuable herd of wild horses. Suddenly, overnight, the poor, struggling farmer was the absolute wealthiest, most powerful man in the entire village. The loud neighbors rushed over again, loudly celebrating his incredible, fantastic, entirely miraculous good fortune. The farmer simply smiled calmly, took a slow breath, and softly said, "We will see." The very next morning, the farmer's young, strong, brave son was aggressively trying to train one of the wild, unbroken horses. He was violently thrown from the angry horse and completely, terribly broke his leg. The neighbors came running, weeping loudly, wailing about this tragic, terrible, completely unfair misfortune, saying the strong son would absolutely not be able to help with the crucial, fast-approaching harvest. The farmer simply smiled calmly, took a slow breath, and softly said, "We will see." Exactly 1 week later, the king's massive, terrifying, heavily armed army marched rapidly through the small, quiet village, violently and forcibly conscripting every single healthy, strong young man to desperately fight in a brutal, deadly, completely terrifying war. Because the farmer's son had a severely broken leg, the ruthless army left him entirely behind in the safety of his home. All the neighbors came over immediately, weeping with profound joy, loudly praising the farmer's absolute, miraculous, unbelievable good luck. The farmer simply smiled calmly, took a deep, steady breath, and softly said, "We will see." Friends, this is the absolute, masterful, deeply profound secret to safely navigating the terrifying, chaotic unpredictability of the vast future. You have absolutely no idea what the long-term, deeply hidden consequences of any single event will truly be. The exact thing you are desperately, bitterly crying about today might easily be the exact, absolutely necessary catalyst for your greatest, most profound joy tomorrow. The grand promotion you are frantically, exhaustingly chasing might completely end up causing you massive, crushing, unbearable stress, while the terrifying job loss you fear so deeply might actually open the wide door to your true, beautiful, entirely peaceful calling. When you firmly, rigidly attach heavy, absolute labels of good and bad to the completely neutral, flowing events of your life, you instantly trap yourself in an exhausting, endless, highly terrifying emotional roller coaster. When a sudden, highly unexpected difficulty arises violently in your life, try deeply to adopt the profound, quiet, unshakable wisdom of that old, peaceful farmer. Take a deep, incredibly slow breath, step firmly back from the immediate, blinding, chaotic panic, and softly, gently say to yourself, "We will see." By doing this completely simple act, you instantly create a massive, spacious, highly protective cushion of peace completely around the difficult event. You absolutely stop fiercely, bitterly arguing with the present reality, and you gently, bravely open your tight mind to the vast, mysterious, completely unpredictable, deeply beautiful possibilities of the entire universe. You completely surrender your exhausting, impossible need to tightly control the narrative, and you simply allow the beautiful, highly complex, entirely mysterious story of your life to unfold completely naturally. Uncertainty is absolutely not your terrifying enemy. Uncertainty is the very fabric of true, profound freedom. If every single moment of your entire life were perfectly planned, strictly guaranteed, and entirely predictable, you would be living in a tight, suffocating, completely mechanical prison. It is precisely because you absolutely do not know what will happen tomorrow that your fragile life contains the breathtaking possibility of sudden miracles, spontaneous, wild joy, and profound, completely unexpected love. Embrace the mysterious, beautiful, wide-open unknown. Walk bravely into the dark, thick fog with absolute, unshakable trust in your own internal, quiet compass. This deep trust does not mean you will never feel the cold touch of fear. It means you feel the fear completely, acknowledge its heavy presence, and consciously decide to take the next brave step anyway. It means you look at the terrifying turbulence of the world, take a deep, steadying breath, and remember that you have an unbreakable, quiet center that will always guide you safely home. This quiet center is absolutely not a physical place you have to travel to reach. It is a profound, magnificent state of being that you carry completely within your own chest everywhere you go. When the dark, heavy clouds of confusion and fear gather fiercely in your mind, you only need to consciously remember that you are the vast, untouched sky behind those temporary clouds. You possess an incredible, inherent capacity for profound forgiveness, deep understanding, and absolute, radiant love. Consider the profound, incredibly moving history of a young, brave prince named Dagavu. He lived in a time of great political turbulence, terrifying violence, and bitter, endless warfare. His parents, the gentle king and queen of a small, peaceful kingdom, had been violently overthrown, completely stripped of their royal titles, and forced to hide in deep, terrified obscurity by a highly aggressive, ruthless neighboring ruler named Brahmadatta. Young Prince Dagavu was sent far away to live in secret, entirely separated from his beloved family, just to ensure his physical survival. Eventually, the ruthless King Brahmadatta discovered the secret hiding place of Dagavu's parents. He cruelly ordered them to be publicly executed in the busy city square to completely eliminate any future threat to his stolen throne. Young Dagavu, hearing the terrifying news, rushed secretly into the crowded city. He stood quietly, completely hidden in the massive, noisy crowd, and watched in sheer, agonizing horror as his beloved parents were led to their entirely unjust death. As the deposed king walked toward his tragic end, he saw his young son hiding in the terrified crowd. He absolutely could not speak directly to Dagavu without revealing the boy's secret identity and entirely ensuring his immediate death. So, the wise, incredibly peaceful king spoke a profound, cryptic message out loud, seemingly to no one, but intended entirely for the shattered heart of his weeping son. He said loudly, "Do not look too far, do not look too near. Hatred is absolutely never appeased by hatred. Hatred is only appeased by non-hatred." Young Dagavu memorized those profoundly difficult words as he watched his entire world shatter completely into dust. Years passed slowly. Dagavu grew into a strong, highly skilled, deeply intelligent young man. He cleverly managed to gain employment in the grand palace of the very same ruthless King Brahmadatta who had violently murdered his parents. Dagavu was so incredibly talented and completely dedicated that he quickly rose through the ranks and became the king's absolute most trusted, personal attendant. The king had absolutely no idea that his most loyal servant was actually the grieving son of his deeply wronged enemies. One day, the king decided to go on a long, exhausting hunting trip deep into the wild, dense forest. He took Dagavo with him, completely leaving the heavy royal guards far behind. After hours of riding, the king became incredibly tired. He dismounted his heavy horse, lay down on the soft, green grass, and rested his royal head directly on the lap of his trusted servant, Dagavo. Within moments, the exhausted king fell into a deep, heavy, completely vulnerable sleep. Friends, try to deeply imagine the massive, terrifying storm that suddenly erupted entirely inside the mind of young Dagavo. He looked down at the sleeping face of the ruthless man who had completely destroyed his family, stolen his beautiful kingdom, and caused him years of agonizing, bitter tears. The absolute, perfect opportunity for swift, complete revenge had miraculously presented itself. They were completely alone in the silent, empty forest. No one would ever know. Dagavo slowly, quietly drew his sharp, heavy sword from its leather sheath. He raised the shining blade high into the air, completely ready to violently strike down the sleeping king and finally balance the heavy, bloody scales of justice. But in that exact, breathless, terrifying fraction of a second, the profoundly wise, gentle words of his dying father echoed entirely through his racing mind. Do not look too far, do not look too near. Hatred is absolutely never appeased by hatred. Hatred is only appeased by non-hatred. Dagavo froze completely. He looked at the sharp sword in his trembling hand. He realized with absolute, terrifying clarity that if he violently struck the king's loyal followers would inevitably seek bitter revenge against him. He would then have to kill them, and their families would fiercely hate him, creating a massive, endless, incredibly bloody cycle of continuous, agonizing turbulence. He deeply understood that violent revenge would absolutely not bring his beloved parents back to life. It would only completely turn him into the exact same ruthless, violent monster he despised so deeply. With tears of profound, overwhelming emotional release streaming down his face, Dagavo slowly lowered the heavy sword. He quietly, deliberately slid the sharp blade completely back into its leather sheath. He consciously, bravely chose to break the heavy, terrible chain of violent hatred right there in the silent forest. Suddenly, the king woke up in an absolute, terrified panic. He sat up quickly, gasping for air, sweating profusely. He frantically told Dagavo that he just had a terrifying, incredibly vivid nightmare where the son of his old enemies was violently holding a sharp sword entirely over his throat. Dagavo looked directly into the deeply terrified eyes of the king. He slowly drew his sharp sword once again, but this time, he absolutely did not raise it to strike. He gently held it with both hands and softly offered the heavy handle directly to the king. Dagavo calmly, peacefully revealed his true, hidden identity. He told the completely shocked king that he was indeed the grieving son of the murdered monarchs. He confessed that he had just raised the heavy sword to completely take the king's life, but he had consciously, deliberately chosen to grant the king profound forgiveness instead, deeply honoring the final, peaceful wishes of his wise father. Dagavo then bravely invited the king to take the sword and completely end his young life if the king still deeply feared him. The ruthless King Brahmadatta was completely, utterly shattered by this unimaginable, breathtaking display of absolute, pure compassion. The heavy, dark armor of his lifelong paranoia and violent aggression completely broke into 1,000 pieces. He fell to his knees, weeping bitterly in the soft dirt, and profoundly begged the young prince for absolute forgiveness. The two men, former bitter, mortal enemies, warmly embraced in the quiet, completely peaceful forest. They returned to the grand city not as hostile enemies, but as deeply bonded, lifelong friends. The violent, turbulent kingdom was completely transformed into a place of radiant, enduring peace simply because one single, brave young man consciously decided to entirely drop the heavy, burning weapon of hatred. Friends, you are holding invisible, sharp swords entirely over the sleeping heads of the people who have deeply wronged you. You carry the heavy, exhausting blade of bitter resentment everywhere you go, secretly waiting for the perfect, completely justified moment to strike back, to prove them entirely wrong, to loudly demand your absolute vindication. But carrying that heavy, dark sword is completely exhausting your beautiful, radiant soul. It is severely draining the precious, vital energy you desperately need to build a joyful, deeply meaningful life. You must absolutely realize that profound forgiveness is not a special gift you give to the person who hurt you. Profound forgiveness is the magnificent, liberating gift you give entirely to yourself. When you consciously, deliberately sheath the sharp sword of your bitter anger, you completely free yourself from the heavy, dark prison of the painful past. You absolutely stop allowing the deeply flawed, highly confused actions of another human being to entirely dictate your own internal, precious state of mind. You gracefully reclaim your absolute power. You bravely step completely off the exhausting, endless, violent wheel of retaliation and gently step onto the quiet, deeply peaceful path of absolute emotional freedom. This profound, daily practice of shaping your own mind is the absolute highest, most noble work any human being can possibly undertake. You spend so much of your precious, limited time obsessively shaping the external, physical world. You fiercely shape your complex career, you carefully shape your physical body, you meticulously shape your beautiful home, and you desperately try to shape the complete opinions of everyone entirely around you. But you frequently, completely neglect the incredibly vital, completely essential task of gently, carefully shaping your own internal landscape. There is a deeply beautiful, profoundly insightful story concerning a very young, highly observant seeker named Sukha. His name literally translated to profound happiness. One bright, sunny morning, young Sukha was walking quietly through a busy, entirely ordinary village. He walked completely in silence, simply observing the incredibly mundane, ordinary actions of the busy people working entirely around him. He saw a group of hard-working, entirely focused farmers actively irrigating their dry, thirsty fields. They were using simple, wooden tools to dig small, shallow channels in the dark earth, carefully, deliberately guiding the fast-flowing water exactly where they wanted it to go. They were completely directing the wild, powerful flow of nature to actively nourish their growing crops. A little further down the dusty road, he saw a group of highly skilled fletchers working entirely with fire. They were holding bent, completely crooked wooden arrow shafts over the hot, burning coals. Once the hardwood became warm and slightly soft, they used their strong, skilled hands to carefully, patiently bend the wood until the arrows were absolutely, perfectly straight, ready to fly completely true to their intended target. Finally, as he reached the very edge of the busy village, he watched a group of dedicated, muscular carpenters working entirely with rough, completely unshaped logs of wood. They were using sharp, heavy saws and simple, flat planes to violently carve, shave, and entirely smooth the rough timber until it became beautiful, perfectly crafted, completely functional wheels for a wooden cart. Young Sukha stopped completely in his tracks. A massive, entirely profound realization washed completely over his highly observant, deeply quiet mind. He thought deeply to himself. The farmers easily, masterfully guide the wild water. The Fletchers carefully, patiently straighten the crooked arrows. The carpenters skillfully, beautifully shape the rough wood. All of these ordinary people possess the incredible, absolute power to completely tame, direct, and completely shape the physical, inanimate things of this world. If completely ordinary people can shape water, arrows, and rough wood, why should a dedicated, intelligent human being absolutely not be able to completely shape, tame, and entirely direct their own living mind? With this profound, earth-shattering realization burning brightly in his heart, young Sukha immediately left the busy, noisy village. He went directly to a completely quiet, highly secluded room. He sat down firmly on a simple cushion, closed his eyes completely, and began the magnificent, deeply internal work of carefully guiding the wild water of his completely scattered attention. He began the profound work of gently straightening the completely crooked arrows of his deeply confused thoughts. He began the deeply beautiful work of completely smoothing out the rough, highly abrasive edges of his bitter, unhealed emotions. Through profound, quiet, entirely dedicated practice, he successfully tamed his highly turbulent mind. He attained a state of absolute, unshakable, completely radiant peace, proving entirely to the chaotic world that the absolute highest, most magnificent form of mastery is absolutely never the mastery of the external, physical elements, but the profound, complete mastery of the internal, completely invisible self. Friends, you are exactly like young Sukha walking through the busy, distracting village of your own incredibly complicated life. You possess that exact same, profound, absolute power to completely shape your own internal reality. You are absolutely not a helpless, completely passive victim of your own chaotic, highly turbulent thoughts. When a dark, anxious thought violently arises, you absolutely do not have to blindly, helplessly follow it entirely down the dark, terrifying rabbit hole of complete panic. You can gently, skillfully redirect that wild water. You can consciously choose to place your complete, undivided attention directly on the simple, completely steady rhythm of your own breathing. When you notice your mind becoming entirely bent and deeply crooked with heavy, bitter judgments about other people, you can intentionally, patiently use the warm fire of your own deep compassion to gently straighten it out. You can actively remind yourself that everyone is carrying a heavy, completely invisible burden. You can consciously, beautifully shape your mind to be a vast, welcoming, entirely peaceful refuge, not a dark, highly judgmental, completely terrifying courtroom. But you must deeply understand that this profound shaping of the mind takes incredible, daily, entirely dedicated patience. It is absolutely not a quick, magical, instant fix. You live in a highly impatient, completely demanding culture that intensely expects instant, immediate results for absolutely everything. You want your profound spiritual peace delivered exactly like a fast food meal, completely ready in exactly 5 minutes. When you sit down to rest quietly, and your highly active mind continues to race wildly, you immediately become deeply frustrated, loudly declaring that you are completely terrible at finding peace, and you quickly give up entirely. You must absolutely change your heavy, demanding expectations. Think deeply about a profound, incredibly beautiful teaching concerning a simple, rough handful of coarse salt. If you take a large, heavy handful of bitter, coarse salt and throw it entirely into a very small, completely fragile glass of clear drinking water, what exactly happens? The water instantly becomes incredibly salty, deeply bitter, and entirely undrinkable. The small, limited volume of the water is completely overwhelmed by the strong, intense bitterness of the salt. Now, imagine taking that exact same heavy handful of bitter, coarse salt and throwing it entirely into the massive, wide, incredibly deep, fast-flowing waters of a grand, majestic river. Does the massive river suddenly become completely salty and entirely undrinkable? Absolutely not. The Grand River is so incredibly vast, so profoundly deep, and so entirely expansive that the small handful of bitter salt makes absolutely no difference at all. The massive river simply absorbs the bitter salt completely, effortlessly dissolving it, and continues to flow beautifully, sweetly, and entirely pure toward the vast ocean. The heavy handful of bitter salt represents the absolutely inevitable, daily pains, sudden disappointments, and harsh criticisms of your turbulent life. You absolutely cannot entirely prevent the salt from being thrown at you. People will sometimes be deeply unkind. Projects will entirely fail. Sudden sickness will occasionally visit your fragile body. The salt is a completely guaranteed part of the human experience. The profound, entirely life-changing difference absolutely does not lie in frantically trying to stop the salt. The complete difference lies entirely in the absolute size of the vessel receiving it. If your mind is incredibly small, deeply tight, highly defensive, and entirely self-obsessed, you are exactly like that tiny, fragile glass of water. Every single, tiny pinch of daily criticism or small inconvenience will make your entire life completely bitter, utterly overwhelming, and deeply miserable. But if you actively, intentionally cultivate a mind that is entirely vast, deeply compassionate, highly open, and profoundly spacious, you become exactly like the magnificent, Grand River. You make your heart so incredibly wide that when the bitter salt of the world is thrown into your life, it simply dissolves completely into your vast, entirely undisturbed peace. You feel the sharp sting for a brief, fleeting second, but it absolutely does not turn your entire day, your entire week, or your entire precious life into a bitter, completely miserable experience. How exactly do you make your fragile heart as vast as the Grand River? You do it by consciously, actively stepping completely outside of your own small, tight, heavily defended ego. You do it by deeply recognizing the profound, absolute interconnectedness of absolutely all living beings. When you begin to sincerely care about the profound happiness of the weary stranger sitting next to you exactly as much as you care about your own, your heart instantly expands. When you look at the highly difficult, deeply annoying person in your life and truly see their hidden, completely terrified inner child, your heart completely breaks wide open into boundless, majestic space. You make your heart vast by practicing deep, entirely unconditional gratitude for the incredibly simple, entirely ordinary miracles that happen every single day. The fact that your lungs effortlessly draw in invisible air to sustain your beating heart is a completely staggering, profound miracle. The fact that the massive, burning sun rises entirely predictably every single morning to completely warm the dark earth is an absolute marvel. When you firmly anchor your mind in profound, deep awe for the simple fact of existence, the tiny, highly dramatic, completely temporary problems of your daily life suddenly completely lose their terrifying, heavy weight. You must completely remember that this beautiful, deeply turbulent world is absolutely not your permanent, entirely fixed home. You are simply a deeply privileged, incredibly beautiful, completely temporary visitor passing quietly through this magnificent, highly chaotic marketplace of existence. You are here to learn profoundly, to love entirely unconditionally, and to beautifully, gracefully let go of absolutely everything you completely cannot keep. You do not need to entirely carry the heavy luggage of your painful past or the terrifying, heavy backpack of your imaginary future. You can walk completely light, beautifully unburdened, and entirely free. You can look at the massive, terrifying storms of the world with deep, completely grounded, entirely unshakable peace, knowing absolutely that every single storm eventually completely runs out of rain. When you absolutely fully embrace the profound, entirely beautiful truth of constant, continuous change, you completely stop desperately fighting the universe. You gently, bravely open your open hands and let the highly unpredictable, incredibly beautiful river of life simply flow completely through your fingers. You find your profound, unshakable joy absolutely not in tightly holding on to things, but in beautifully, gracefully allowing them to completely exist, and beautifully, entirely gracefully allowing them to completely pass away. May you walk gently through this busy, deeply chaotic world with a heart as completely vast as the clear, blue sky. May you truly find profound, entirely unshakable comfort in the deep, completely silent, beautiful spaces directly between your busy thoughts. May you absolutely always remember the incredible, magnificent, entirely radiant power of your own quiet, completely breathing presence. You are entirely whole, you are completely sufficient, and you are profoundly, deeply, entirely equipped to completely navigate exactly whatever the mysterious, magnificent universe beautifully presents to you next. Let the completely beautiful, incredibly simple, profoundly silent light of your own deep awareness simply shine entirely brightly, fully illuminating exactly the beautiful, quiet step directly in front of you.